I became an avid consumer almost immediately. It was like a drug injected in my veins.
How old were you at this point?
12. Early exposure to pornography has the same impact as sexual abuse.
When did the addiction become something more?
Whether it's sex addiction, food addiction, alcoholism, there's always driven by two basic things.
What would you say are the top 3 best practical resources that can be used to help somebody?
I'm learning the most important principle for recovery in mental health is...
So you've worked now with hundreds of men over the last few decades. Have you seen recovery? Have you seen healed marriages?
Absolutely, yes.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Lila Rose Show. Before we get into today's episode, a quick content warning. If you are listening to this episode with children, this is an episode that is not appropriate for kids, and I recommend that you listen to this episode later. On today's episode, we ask the question, why? Why do people fall into porn addiction? Why do people fall into cheating or infidelity sometimes in their marriages? And even the question of why do molesters molest? Gene McConnell is the founder of Authentic Relationships International, and he has worked with the LAPD and other organizations to train law enforcement and experts for how to rescue women and children from sex trafficking, as well as to address the root causes as to why men and even women today increasingly are consumers of sexual content as well as prostitution. Gene himself battled a sex addiction for years, and he's very open about that in this episode and shares some of the root causes behind what he experienced. Gene also shares ultimately a story of hope and healing, so make sure to watch all the way through. We explore these topics at the Lila Rose Show because they matter. Because many people today are affected by the sexual chaos and dysfunction in our culture, but we always want to seek to understand and ultimately seek to heal and set free. Also, you guys, thank you so much to the over 300,000 of you who have subscribed to the show on YouTube and are listening and watching. Thank you. It means the world to me. I love to create this content for all of you. And I hope that if you are not already subscribed, make sure that you join the rest of us and subscribe. And if you're listening on podcast app, make sure to leave us 5 stars and a review that helps us reach more people. Gene McConnell, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much for coming in. I am so excited to talk to you. I think this is one of those incredibly important topics that affects so many people, and your story is incredible. So thank you. Thank you for making the time.
It's my pleasure.
You are part of touring right now a very fascinating documentary called Buying Her, very serious topic. And you are working with Exodus Cry and other organizations, I know. Can you give people a little bit more about your background?
Well, I grew up in church. If you want to start kind of there, I grew up as a preacher's kid. Been in church more than I've been anywhere else in my life. And growing up in that world was very beautiful and good. I got a lot of great memories. But in that world, there was very little opportunity to talk about the things that I struggled with. And when I was 6 years old, I was molested by a babysitter, and she was within the church. And that was a very painful time because I longed for attention and affirmation and love. And my dad was a contractor and a pastor at the same time, so he had very little time. And I was hungry for attention, and this babysitter gave me the time. And then she began to introduce sex into the relationship over time. And she said she loved me. She thought I was handsome and special, and she really cared. And boy, that felt good. What didn't feel good was the sex. I felt dirty. I felt soiled. I felt like damaged goods. But I couldn't talk about that because I was afraid of losing what I was getting. And so the dilemma of feeling treasured / feeling shame. So my first sexual experience was shame and pleasure combined.
At age 6?
At 6'6".
How often were you getting exposed to this babysitter as a child?
She was next door to us, so it was quite often for several years. I can't put the exact numbers together on that, because it seems at least for a couple, 2 or 3 years. And she was always nice and kind and sweet, so there wasn't any threatening or beating me up, or it was to simply, I really care about you and this is normal. And so the feelings that I had were this feeling I am dirty, I am broken, I'm damaged goods. And so what it did to me at that moment was there was a place of me that was now hidden. I couldn't talk about. And what I mean by that is that I was afraid to let anybody see that part because I knew in church circles that sex was bad, and quote unquote bad or wrong or unhealthy. And so I had this idea of sex being unhealthy. And yet here I'm getting pleasure and there's something wrong with me that I would enjoy or I would find pleasure in something that was so wrong. And so a part of this had a lot of self-hatred and self-contempt because, I mean, why would someone healthy want something bad and enjoy something bad? And why didn't I tell somebody? Why didn't I go to my parents? Why didn't I say no to her? And all I could do was take that inward. So I internalized it, and I believed inside that there's a part of me that you can't see. There's a part of me that if I share, then I'll have a high cost. And so I began to learn to compartmentalize stuff. And because at 6 being molested, at the age of 9, I was molested by an older boy who was brought into our home. And his parents were going through a divorce, and my parents took him in to help him. And he moved into my bedroom. And the whole time he was there, I don't even have the number of times. It's just one kind of blurred memory of many encounters sexually.
How old was this boy?
He was 6 or 7 years older. And he represented a kind of a dad figure. You know, we skateboarded together. We played ball together. He taught me how to catch, how to hit. He beat up my bullies. He was kind of like that dad figure. And we did everything together. And then he introduced sex as well. And again, I didn't know how to put words to what the heck's just happening. Do I have this like neon sign on my forehead that says, here I am, molest me, right? Because, I mean, these two people, this girl and now this guy, are close and they're friends, but they are doing the same thing to me, just male and female. And so I knew that I couldn't talk about that. And the fact that I was enjoying some of it, the fact that he was giving me attention and affirmation, I just internalized the whole experience as I'm bad.
Did you feel close to your parents during all of this time?
I felt close in the sense of, I go to church, memorize scripture, enjoyed, I would actually, even at 9 years old, I was actually speaking at different situations. I felt close in doing projects around the house, but, not close emotionally. And for me, I was, I use the word needy, like I was a needy kid, but actually I was just a normal kid wanting attention, hungry for attention. And there are certain people who recognize that and then abuse that, misuse that, harm. And they harm us by looking for some water and they give us poison. And I didn't see it at the time as it was their fault, that they're taking advantage of something very, very special. There's nothing wrong with a child needing love and needing attention or needing a hug or needing time. But they gave it. And when they gave it, they had a hook to it.
I'm so sorry, Gene.
Yeah. It was, it's extremely painful because any pictures that I have of that 6-year-old, I almost destroyed everything. I had self-contempt for him because I felt he's dirty, he's ugly, he's no good. And I couldn't look at pictures from 6 to 16. Literally, it was hard. And so I only have a few of those pictures now, even now. But I that's totally turned for me now. But back then, I couldn't even look at them.
As you may know, porn addiction is on the rise for both women and men today. The porn industry is $1 billion industry preying off of vulnerable men and women. The good news is that there is a solution, and our show is proud to partner with CovenantEyes.com. CovenantEyes.com is not only something to block explicit material on your phone, your tablet, or your laptop, but CovenantEyes.com is also a community to give you strength to choose good things instead of to choose the destruction of porn. For over 25 years, Covenant Eyes has been helping thousands of people break free and stay free from porn addiction. Whether you're a parent protecting your kids, a husband searching for accountability, or a wife searching for accountability, or somebody who just wants to make sure that porn doesn't make it onto your screen, CovenantEyes.com has got you covered. And right now, Covenant Eyes is offering a free 30-day trial specifically for listeners of this show. So you can go to CovenantEyes.com and get a free 30-day trial using the code Lila. That's CovenantEyes.com. Use the code Lila for a free 30-day trial. Start your journey to freedom today.
I think what you're describing is every parent's worst nightmare, that this could happen to their child. And I know there's a whole world of your story we're going to get to. But I want to ask you, based on your experience and what you've seen from the many, many men you've helped and women you've helped, do you have any recommendations to parents about how they can protect their children, and any telltale signs that you would say you would identify that there may be abuse happening, even under the parent's own roof, that they're unaware of?
I think the number one thing is that you be a safe person to talk to. Negative stuff as well as positive stuff, that there's time taken. And I would say that my parents loved me, and they worked hard to provide a good environment, but they didn't know how to just sit down and let's have a conversation or let's hang out, and not trying to do a sex talk, but actually on an ongoing conversations about difficult things and good things, and being able to be safe to have conversation. Because I think the thing that is most painful for a kid, for me especially when I was a kid, is that I didn't have a safe space to talk. And I want you to think about this, that I was in church more than anybody else because I was there Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, Friday night. I was there when those doors were open because I was a preacher's kid. So every time I'm there, and all of that stuff that is happening to me, and I'm watching people worship, I'm hearing the words being spoken, I'm watching people go down to the altars, and in that environment where it's supposed to be the best possible place to get your stuff on the table, I didn't feel like I could. And so the pain and the shame of not having anywhere to talk about it and to carry that inside is huge. It's huge.
It's devastating.
Yeah. And so I don't look back and go, my parents were evil or they were bad or they did wrong. I just see it as my parents didn't have the tools either.
What would it have looked like at the time for your parents to have had those tools?
To have regular times where we just sat and talked, and conversation about what's going on in your life, being more attentive. And I was a performer, so I had a ton of shame on the inside. And so the way I tried to overcome that shame was to be really good. So I was extremely talented. I was outgoing. I had a super bubbly personality. So you would never know that I was smiling on the outside, biggest party guy in the place, but on the inside, I was dying, and no language to even tell you why I'm hurting, and then on top of that, at 12, I was at a church camp. One of the most powerful moments, God moments I had at that church camp was my really recommitment to walk with God and to serve him in a big way. And that the last night at camp, the boy that I had carried his baseball bat for him, I'd been his buddy throughout the week. He was staying in the same cabin I was. And the last night he molested me as well. And so it was like, oh, wow. I mean,
how old was he?
He was 19. I was 12.
So he was like a camp counselor.
He was like a camp counselor, but he was still a participant. And he was talent. He won all the talent contests. He was the best athlete there, and everybody liked him. And so I got close to him because I thought, he would be, he would make me feel better about my own self. And he was kind of like a mentor in my mind. And then he molested me as well. And it just reinforced to me that depth or intimacy of closeness connected to sex. And I don't think I could have put language to it at the time, but I know looking back that is what happened. And so especially with sexual abuse, it breaks the ability to have closeness. It actually twists it and turns it, and it shames it so that closeness is sexual. And it also causes deep inside confusion as to who am I, because there is a side of me when I was in church, I want to be like God. I want to be what God's calling me to be. I want to have impact. I want to walk in a healthy frame. And then I would get into circumstances where I would be going, oh my gosh, I am no good. Look at this part of me. Nobody knows about this. And if they did, it will be the end of me. And then I would just get my guard up, and then I would shut down inside. And those are the times that I would find me going to the wrong choices. And right after that camp, I was at my uncle's house. I don't know if he was an uncle or a cousin. He was a cousin. And he was an elder in the church, and he led worship and did some counseling for people. And I was playing Army in his backyard, and the shed was locked. Normally it was locked up. It was open, but normally when I've been over there many other times, and that shed was never open. This time it was open. And so I walked in the shed to hide, and in the shed was 200 to 300 pornography magazines. So my first exposure to pornography or to sexuality in a visual form was there. And I kept coming back to my cousin's house over the period of years, going through the magazines, tearing out pages, taking them to school. I became an avid consumer almost immediately. It was like a drug injected in my veins. And
how old were you at this point?
12. And again, how do you talk about that?
Did you talk about it with anyone?
No, absolutely not. No, because I saw a lot of different sermons, not by my dad. My dad was never that way, but we were with the church. We were exposed to a lot of other preachers and topics, and I never heard anybody talk redemptive. It was always you're a scumbag, or get your act together. How could you as a Christian? And so it was always shaming. It was always making you feel like a worm because you actually had thoughts or you actually were consuming. And how could you be a Christian and consume at the same time? So even I was wrestling with my own, whether I was even a Christian. And so it was a really, really difficult season of life. And from 12 to 16, I was an avid consumer of porn. And when I would go on dates, I would try different things based on what I was consuming and ideas. And, the articles, they say, well, you don't look at the pictures, we just read the articles. Well, the articles are even worse, to be honest. They bring in toxic ideas of brother-sister relationship, mother-son relationship, father-daughter relationship, and having women who are, now as a parent know, or man know, an adult, that they were 18 or older, but they were dressed like little girls. So they had bobby socks and pigtails and ribbons and teddy bears and all of that. So they were dressed like a little kid, but they were adults. And so it set the appetite for just for the youth, the young. And so this was really beating me up because, again, keep in mind, I'm in church every week, but I'm also consuming. And so what that looked like, without going into great detail, is I would run down to the altar, I'd cry out, and I'd say, God, I don't want this in my life. I want this to change. And I'd make a commitment, never do it again. And then here I am again. It's 2 weeks later, sometimes maybe a couple of days. Ultimately, I couldn't go more than a couple months, and I was back at it.
It's summertime. It's the time of barbecues and cookouts. It's time to get your Good Ranchers subscription going on. Good Ranchers sources 100% of its chicken, its beef, its pork, its fish from the United States. You might not be aware of this, but 85% of the meat that you may buy in the grocery store, or the chicken, is actually from outside of the United States. They'll put product of the USA on there, but it's actually imported in from other countries. And the quality can be hit or miss. With GoodRanchers.com, you know exactly where your meat is coming from. Local American farmers and ranchers. And you know that the best cuts of the meat have been made and carefully vacuum sealed in each individual package so that there's nothing wasted. So if you go to GoodRanchers.com today, pick any bundle, any subscription box, it's delivered right to your door. You get a full $40 off your order, plus a free add-on of meat for life. Your choice of Wagyu burgers, delicious, hot dogs, bacon, or chicken wings in every box for the life of your subscription. Just use the code Lila at checkout. Use the code Lila at checkout at Good Ranchers for $40 off your order, lifetime free add-on, as well as fast and free shipping. Enjoy your American meat delivered. Did anyone in your life up to that point know anything about any of this?
No.
It was a secret you kept deep down.
Totally.
And the people that abused you, from that first sitter to that young guy who your parents had moved into your home, did they ever have a conversation with you about the abuse at any point?
No.
So
not early. No.
They just sort of dropped off at some point. The guy moved out of the house. The babysitter stopped babysitting.
Yeah, the babysitter stopped babysitting. We moved away. That's when that stopped. The boy was family member, so that happened. Even though it stopped at a certain age, it just stopped. It wasn't any conversation about it, just stopped. And then we moved away from each other, come back around, but no conversation about it.
Did you ever have a moment growing up in those really ages, we're talking like 6 to maybe 18, where you felt that you could even talk to God about it? You said you were cried out on the altar, I don't want to be looking at porn. But was there an internal monologue about what the events that had happened to you, about the pornography afterwards? Or was it more just you knew it was happening and you didn't know what to do with it and it was hurting you?
The way it went for me was I struggled with the fantasy. It came out fantasy-wise. So a lot of this, the wounding, instead of addressing the wounding got sexualized. Right? Mm-hmm. So then the sexualization means it actually turns into action. It turns into fantasy, turns into thought life, masturbating to those images. There's studies out there that when we masturbate to those images, that the orgasm to that image reinforces the behavior you're consuming. And even though I might say I would never do that, it's the pleasure is reinforcing that idea. And so the thing that's really difficult to even talk about, I'm in the presence of you as a woman, so it's a little difficult. But the idea of seeing material that I said I would never consume, and I would never do, well, the material that got me high before never works. It stops working, and it needed more deviance. It needed more, something that crosses a line, something to get the excitement or arousal, and then you're having an orgasm according to that, and it continues to escalate, continues to grow till you don't even recognize who the heck you are anymore, and everybody on the outside is patting you on the back, saying you're a great guy because, like I said, I'm a performer. And the greater shame I had, the greater performer I became. So my performance was my way of trying to undo the shame I was carrying inside. It was a very difficult thing for me. And at 16, probably one of the hardest things for me was my sister was my best friend. She's 14, I was 16. She was 2 years younger than me. We rode horses together. We rode bikes together. We lived out in the country. And so we lived a mile away from our nearest neighbor. So we would go to the creek and we'd swim. We'd take hikes together. We all go hiking or camping together. We just did life as best friends. And then when I at 16 was dating her friends at 14, and she was dating guys my age, so it was double dates, and so we were like this. And I was walking home from my wrestling practice in high school, and as the last mile of getting to the house, there was this car that drove by, and it threw a magazine, or it was actually a book, threw a book out the window into a ditch about probably 100 yards in front of me. And so I wonder what the heck they threw out, and so I walk up and I pick it up, and it was a book that I don't even remember the title, but it was something like Playing with Little Sis. So it was encouraging brother-sister sexual relationship and saying that this is how you learn about sex, that sisters are meant to be where you can explore and it's safe and all that. And never thought in a million years to that point, I can say with full integrity, I never had a thought about my sister. All of a sudden now, reading that book made me think. And so within a month of that time, somewhere in there, time is kind of a blurry, but really close to that time, my sister was asleep, and I did some exploratory stuff with my sister while she was asleep. And to me, it just about killed me.
Does she know?
I talked to her later in my recovery side of it, and she doesn't even remember. So she never. Did she forgive you? Yeah, she did. And we had a great relationship on the other end of it. My sister's now died from COVID. So we did work through this. But when I first approached it, she just said, I don't remember that. And so it was, well, I still own it. And I know what happened. And, when you're ready to have the conversation in a real way, I'm ready. Whether that's counseling or whatever. So I took full ownership of it, but that was later in life that I took ownership of that. But at that time, it was so painful because now I see my sister in the wrong light. And so I literally had this, I would say probably the biggest breakdown in my life, where I just got on my face and I just lost it before the Lord. And I just said, God, I've got to turn this around. I can't continue this path. And keep in mind that while I was in that 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old, while I was dating and all the things that I was consuming was being tried in those relationships. And quite frankly, there were some of the girls were recipients, or they were accepted, or they accepted some of the behavior. But for the most part, the girls hated it. And I lost relationships over, and I couldn't understand, and this sounds really stupid as we're talking about it, but I couldn't understand. Here's a magazine that says this is adult entertainment. This is how adult men and adult women treat each other. This is how we relate. And this is wide open. You can buy this. This is what it means to be an adult. So I want to be an adult man, and I'm trying to learn how to relate with women in this framework. And so I literally thought I was operating in a healthy way in some ways, because I know it was just too soon, but I know it sounds really weird. But none of it worked, really. And it caused relationship after relationship after relationship to break. And many of the young women never told me why. And so it was always a dilemma for like, what is going on? And so to realize that early exposure to pornography has the same impact as sexual abuse, because it wounds the ability to see sex and women and men and relationships in a healthy light. It puts dirt on what is good. And so it wasn't that sex, it's not healthy for us to have sex with each other without marriage, but it wasn't the sex is the issue. It was the toxic belief system, the toxic tools, the toxic ideas, fantasies trying to come into a relationship. So it was destructive. And the ones that were more receptive actually learned later that their background had sexual abuse. And their walls were already broken down sexually. So it was more of a norm for them. And so,
Gene, when you're talking about this disconnect in the women that you're dating and getting to know, is it because you're saying the porn was training you in these deviant and sexually destructive behaviors, that the porn sort of was saying, this is play, this is fun, this is normal. And so you were bringing that into these relationships, and these girls would freak out, or if the girls were wounded themselves, they would engage, but it was just broken all around. And this really took on the whole nature of the relationship.
Yep.
Was this undertone.
Right. And, there was articles in the magazines that says, 12 steps to getting in a girl's pants. And the idea that it being in a girl's pants was a home run. Then they had all these different, like, what base did you get on based on the different steps that you took. And there was article after article after article that it's normal for the man to pursue the girl. And then this is how the girl's supposed to respond. So there was an indoctrination of what is supposed to be healthy, but it is not. But if the young boy growing up who hasn't had conversation, I know that we're supposed to wait, but don't have any information around what sex is about. And everything that I'm seeing in sex in this material looks alluring and exciting. And look at the smiles, and everything is glossy and glamorous. So it looks like a life that I'm not having now. And I want that, but I don't understand when I try to apply it, why it's not working. And so it must be me. And it goes right back to the shame aspect, right? It must be me.
When you say those were articles you were reading, do you remember the names of the publications?
Well, Playboy was the biggest one. Playboy, countless. I look back now over the years, as I worked with LAPD for years when I moved into the anti-trafficking and pornography world. So I traveled with LAPD, and we spoke in schools, I spoke in colleges, we've done workshops for law enforcement officers. We did a lot of work in the anti-pornography world, teaching how pornography is harmful. And LA has I don't know where they are today, had the biggest stash of porn, because they had, porn, 85% of all porn is made in LA. So they had the biggest responsibility to go through the magazines, see what's illegal, what's not. And so when I started working with them, I had every copy of Playboy from the beginning to the time. And I did it with a group of people, and we just literally could see, as you start going back through it as an adult now, and you're going, oh my gosh, I can't believe they did this. And they do it with the subtlety of, like I said before, a Girl Scout. She dresses like a Girl Scout. She's an adult. Well, supposedly she's an adult, but she's dressed like a little girl. And so why would you dress a woman like a little girl unless there's an appetite for that? And so the idea is a little boy growing up, and he's learning pornography is your education, and it's supposed to be men's entertainment. This is what's supposed to teach me how to be a good man in the world. Excuse me, it's baloney. It's toxic. It's destructive. You apply any of those principles to real relationship and you're destroying them. And yet I couldn't see that as a kid because this is supposed to be adult. So I was thinking, I'm just doing it wrong. Mm. And so I would double down rather than step back.
Was there anyone up until, let's say, 18 years old that asked you, well, let's get into your 20s, so I know we're going to get into the story of you getting married, but that asked you point blank, Gene, are you looking at pornography?
You know, what's funny is that I was a men's pastor for several different churches over the years. And the typical men questions are you struggling with your thought life? And so, and the most open of guys would say, well, yeah, I am once in a while, but I've got that underhand. But no one would say, so what does that look like? No one would actually ask the question that goes deeper, because I think that most men are afraid to have the conversation, because if they have the conversation, then they'd have to talk about their own. Mm. And so therefore we keep it at thought life. Like, yeah, I'm struggling with my fantasy.
You don't name it as porn.
No, we don't. We very, very few.
But I'm just curious if someone had asked you, and again, it's hard to know going back in time like this, but said to you, Gene, like a close friend or even your own dad, are you looking at porn? Would you just lie through your teeth, or you said, yeah, I'm really struggling? What do you think?
No, I would never tell anybody I was looking at porn. Yeah. No. The only person, no. I look back on it, there was one time in high school that a coach caught me distributing porn to, I'd take Playboy and I'd tear out the pages and then I would sell them to different ones. So I was making money doing that. And so my friends knew that I was doing that, but my coach caught it. And he had a really strong conversation with me about that this isn't cool. And he was not mean, but it was still kind of like, just don't do it. He didn't really give any good tools or talk about it, or it just was bad. And so I just learned to hide it. So being confronted, I just did it more secretly. It didn't confront with, Gene, what's going on inside of you? Why are you drawn to this? Why are you consuming this? Dude, this is not a good thing. It was just, don't do this. And so that just kind of like slapped me on the hand. Okay, I'll just do it secretly. I'll just do it more privately. No real ask. Yeah.
EveryLife.com is America's pro-life baby diaper and wipes company. I love EveryLife.com, and I use EveryLife diapers and wipes for my little ones because these are a best-in-class product that are clean. There's no harmful dyes or fragrances or phthalates in this product. It is designed to be healthy for your little one and good for your little one's skin. If you go to EveryLife.com/join today, by joining the Changing Lives Club, you not only get 10% off your monthly diaper and wipes subscription, in addition to that, you'll get a free tote bag, and EveryLife.com will donate a box of diapers and wipes to a mother and baby in need. And I'm excited to share, EveryLife.com is now offering training pants for your little one. These are 12-hour leak-proof training pants, pull-ups for that little one that is maybe potty training. You got to check them out. EveryLife also has just come out with their new shampoo and baby wash and lotion package. The product is amazing. I have already started to use it. That's EveryLife.com/join. Use the code Lila. When did the porn addiction become something more?
So at 16, I went to Bible college. After that event, I said, God, I'm serious. I'm going to stop this. It's not going to do this anymore. And
with your sister. You left the house at that point.
No, I just said, I made a commitment that I was going to serve God. And so within the next several months, the opportunity for college came, and I chose to do that as a way of demonstrating that I meant business. Mm-hmm. And so when I went to Bible college, literally nothing. Literally, I didn't touch it. And I went from 16 to 21, literally sober.
Wow.
With no touching it. And
when you say no touching it, you mean no pornography?
No pornography.
And what about your relationships? Were they generally chaste or?
Chase.
Wow.
Totally stopped. But I didn't know what I was it was just cutting off the branch, right? It wasn't really stopping it. It just, because the only difference was as I was consuming, now I'm not. and thinking that somehow I can just stop this without dealing with what's driving it. And this is the typical Christian approach to the pornography. And even in recovery, is they're wanting to know, how long have you been sober, and what they mean by that, how long have you not been using it. They want to know about the product. They want to know, how long have you not been consuming? And that's like asking about the fruit. The fruit is there because there's roots. There's a source to it, but we don't really get to the sources. We only just say, cut the branch off. Let's just stop that. And so the typical approach is, you just don't go there anymore. You don't go to the websites anymore. You don't run with those people anymore. You don't buy that magazine anymore. You don't look at those things, and thinking that that is sober. But true sobriety has nothing to do with product. True sobriety has to do with what drives it. We'll get into that a little bit later. So for me, it was 16. I was clean, stopped. 21 that time, and so met my first wife in Bible college, and we got married at 20. I was 20 when we got married, and then the thing that started this thing to go crazy was when my ex-wife was 6 months pregnant. She began to wake up in the middle of the night screaming, crying, sweating, in a fetal ball position. And I tried to touch her, and she pushed me away, tried to comfort her, and she wouldn't let me get close. And I'm trying to have a conversation like, what's going on? And I would come up to her. She would be washing dishes. I'd come and give her a kiss on the neck, and she'd wipe it off. Kiss her on the lips. She'd wipe it off. If I come up and give her a hug, she would stiffen up. And so I don't know what I did. I'm thinking at the time. I didn't know what I did. And inside it went right back to, she sees something. She sees something about me, that dirty little boy. She sees that mess inside somehow. I don't know, that person that doesn't deserve love. And so I reacted big time inside. And so the way I reacted was, now I'm of age, and I walk into a sexually oriented bookstore for the first time. Now,
was she going through like a psychosis of some kind because she's dealing with some issues? Because it sounds like I want to get to how you responded, but for her, what was driving these sudden emotional reactions that she was having?
The baby, the 6 months of her being pregnant, the baby moving inside triggered her own childhood sexual abuse. And so as early as she can remember, now we didn't know this. This was not in anything in our conversations or
Neither
anything.
of you had disclosed that you were both sexually abused as children.
No, we didn't even think that was the worth conversation to have. I mean, but she just was reacting her memories were coming out of the baby movement. But she didn't tell me that. She didn't tell me that I'm having nightmares or I'm having a reaction. She just shut me out, completely shut me out. And my way of reacting, it was saying, well, if you're not going to love me, if you're not going to let me love you, then I have, quote unquote, sex as a need. I have every right to get that need met in my mind at the time. That's wrong. That's false. But in the thinking then, as a sex as a need, and if you're not going to meet it, and I've committed to this relationship and I can't go outside of it, I'm going to violate it if I do. But if you're not going to meet my needs, what do I do? And so I chose to go to this club, this bookstore.
And your wife, she had been sexually abused as a little girl, it sounds like.
Yep.
But she had never disclosed this to you. You had never disclosed. And to this point, it sounds like you had never disclosed your sexual being abused to anyone.
No. In fact, I had so shut that down that I didn't even think that had any relevance. So who wants to talk about something that happened a long time ago? I just didn't see it as important. But when she started reacting, so we decided to get her into some counseling, and then that's when it became real about her own story, which I don't want to tell that story, but it was profound. It was traumatic and unbelievable, but I'm still in this mindset that sex is a need. And I don't care what you've gone through. You should be meeting my needs as a man. And if you're not willing to do that, then I have the right, like I need to eat food, I need to drink water, I need to get air. I have a right to take care of my own needs. That was my thinking.
Who taught you that?
I think that's the pornography. That certainly isn't my parents. My parents had a whole different view of that. You know, they didn't think that way. They didn't have that kind of thoughts.
So you were chased up until getting married, it sounded like. And like you said, and you weren't using porn. You get married and then it kind of reactivated, oh, sex. Now I can have it within the Christian realm because I'm married.
Right.
But that reactivation didn't come with healing or any sort of like clarity on how Jean was behaving before.
Right.
And so when you and your wife were no longer being intimate because she had her trauma, you're just thinking, I'm going to go right back to it.
Well, it was just like white knuckling it. When at 16, I just kind of hold my breath. It's like, so I stopped it, but I did nothing to arrest what was going on. And I had no clue, you know, and I had no place that I felt safe to do that, to even look. So I thought, just change the behavior, just change. And so I did. But when all of this pressure came on and the relationship was sucky in that moment, I went right back to where I left off. And when I walked in that club, it was I was so mad at myself for walking in there because it was the most disgusting material on the wall beyond anything I'd ever seen before. And I was just disgusted by it. And I turned right around and I walked out and I said, I'll never go back, which was the beginning of going back again and again and again. And each time I went back a little more involved.
Was this a strip club?
No, this was an adult bookstore. So, I don't want to get too much into the adult bookstore, but I will say this, that there are what they call glory holes. And the glory holes are, you go into a booth and there's a hole where someone puts their anatomy through the hole, and then you have anonymous sex with someone you don't even know while you're watching movies. And so I thought that was disgusting. And then eventually that I had a couple encounters at the end of that where finally we moved. Thank God we moved away from there because that was going downhill fast for me. And all of this is why I'm now, I'm leading I'm a men's pastor and I'm a youth pastor. And so all of this is happening with Sunday and Wednesdays and Friday nights. But then what am I doing? And it just began to grow. I mean, this thing, and I never talked about it. So I'm sitting there as I'm speaking in front of people, I'm leading, and I'm thinking, Gene, what would they do if they knew what you were doing, Saturday night? What were you doing, going to the club? And so this dilemma of, man, if I talk, this is the end of me. And so more stuff goes down into that closet, that all that other stuff was there unaddressed. And then I would repent and I'd say, I'm not doing it anymore and mean it. But it was just a matter of time. And there I was back again and again. From 21 to 29 was this season where I was out of control. It grew and grew and grew.
Your wife had no idea?
No idea.
Were
No.
you distant from her? Did you have an
Oh, yeah.
emotion?
Well, she knew that there was something wrong because there was no intimacy. No, when I mean intimacy, I'm not talking about sex. Sex happened, but it was more about me having an orgasm than her. It was about me getting what I want and really her. And so there was no connection. There was no real depth. It's such a painful place because when I think back of when she was going, it's very typical for a sex abuse survivor to have the body carry all of that, right? So for her, it was chronic headaches that you couldn't even, You had to turn all the lights out, close all the doors, no noise whatsoever. And for her to, and literally would leave her for hours to get over it, right? But because I believed that sex was my need, and we would go long periods of time where she wouldn't. So I remember in one particular, she was in one of those headache modes and I wanted sex. That's how disconnected I'd gotten. And it even hurt. I mean, it just causes my skin to crawl when I think that had gone to that level of depravity and thinking. And so this was destroying me, and it was destroying my wife, ex-wife now, and my children. And what I didn't recognize is that when someone is in any addiction, that you're emotionally taken from the moment. So every child of an addictive home feels alone, isolated, unloved, unnurtured, even though the parent may be in the room. So I was there, but I wasn't there. And yeah, I'll get into a little bit more of that in a minute. But so at 29, my wife and I had a bump, or we had an argument, and I just decided I was going to take a drive and go to the gym and work out. And so I went to the racquetball court to play racquetball, and it was about 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, and then the parking lot was dark. And it was pretty empty. It wasn't a lot of people. And so I parked in the back of the parking lot. And this woman walks by as I was parking. And inside, something just snapped and said, "This is the opportunity. That all these fantasies that you've had, that you've kind of stuffed down and put down, here it is right in front of you." And so I followed her to her car, and she opened the door to get in, and I asked her, I think it was where Walmart is. I can't remember where, but I asked her a question about a location of something, and she told me. And as she was getting in her car, I forced my way into the car, and put my hands around her throat with the full intent to rape. And she was obviously scared, and she asked me what my intent was, and I told her. And when I told her, the fear in her eyes, it was just like her eyes went to these like large baseballs. It was like pure fear came. And it was like somebody just walked up and hit me across the face and said, "Hello, wake up, dude. What are you doing? You're about to destroy another human being's life. What are you doing?" And I sat there for a moment and froze. And I realized that this fantasy stuff, which I would have never in a million years thought that I would ever take it to that level. But then the fantasy side had taken it all the way through and masturbated to it and had all the sexual highs to it, but never thought about it actually becoming something of real reality. Here I am in that car. And I couldn't, the fear in her eyes is just, it woke me up. It's like somebody just hit me and said, "Gene, what are you doing?" And I said, "Excuse me, I've made a serious mistake." And I let her go, and I got out of the car, and I started walking I was in a daze. I just couldn't believe that I just done that. And I'd done nothing but force my way into the car, which was more than enough to cause a great deal of pain and shame. And so I walked to my own car. She drove by, got my license plate. She turned me in. And that was when I was 29.
So up until this point, had you been seeing prostitutes?
Yes.
And so, and had you been kind of acting out violent sexual things? So this was the first kind of time where violence and sex was, you had maybe, you could say, forced yourself on your own wife,
right,
in even her times of ill health. And that was a form of
totally
not like aggressive. I mean, I wasn't, we're not going to I won't characterize it without knowing how you would characterize it, but
Characterizing it right. It was aggressive.
and so you'd had those experiences with your wife, but this was the first time you were having them with another person.
Yes.
That was not your wife.
Right.
And so when she turned you in, when you got back into that car, did you just hope I'm in a bad dream, this didn't happen, and try to go home and just forget about it? And then the cops showed up at the door, or what happened next?
Well, I mean, it was one of those moments where I felt so much shame and was confused as to how I could have how could I have even gotten there? How could I have stepped into that world? And so I was dazed. So I drove to the house, and I knew that I needed to tell my wife. And so I sat down and said, I need to talk to you. And so I told her what happened.
Right away.
And as I was finishing telling her, the police came up to the front door. So they arrested me. And so I spent time in jail that night. And then we had to go through court system and all that stuff. And then it took a year for that to all happen. And then I was, went to jail I thought it was going to be 6 to 9 years in prison. And it ended up, because of my first offense, and there was nothing other than forcing my way. So they called it aggravated assault, which to me, I think I got it off too easy, honest. But back then I was just looking to get out of this. But the impact was the law enforcement and the prison jail system.
This is in LA.
LA. That didn't hit me as hard as what happened in church. So the church put me in front of 12 elders, and they literally, I'd call it the Hall of Shame. They just literally beat the heck out of me, truthfully. Everything accusational. I get the fact that I lied, I was deceptive, I was hiding. It was betrayal to the people who have trusted me. I get all that. But there was no redemptive framework at all. They made me speak in front of 2 Sunday morning services. So it was just horrific. And then they told the church not to contact me, not to get together with me, not to do anything with me, and I was not to contact them. So literally all those people that were friends were now not. And it just...
During those conversations with the elders, did anything arise to them about your former porn use or the sexual abuse of your childhood? Again, I'm not saying that obviously someone's sexual abuse in their childhood justifies them attempting rape or beginning the attempt of rape. Right. Of course not. But I'm curious if that was part of any of the conversations, like your background.
Everything that they were asking was meant to have information to chop my head off. Mm-hmm. So I was not going to give them anything more than what they knew. I was determined. I was not open in that room. I knew that it was to my deficit if I brought anything on the table other than the fact.
Why do you say that?
Because of the way they were attacking me in the moment. I mean, they were mad at me. They were angry at me. They were telling me I was a scumbag. I was a pervert. I was a wolf in sheep clothing. So there's a lot of that kind of framework going. And none of it was, how can we help you? How can we support you? The only thing that they did do was they said that we will have an elder meet with you once a month, just to stay in touch with you. And then they did a nice little sermon about the prodigal son. Yeah. And so the sermon was really good, but I was just pretty much alienated. And the guy that I was supposed to see, he met with me once out of 6 months, and they found out that he was in his own stuff. And so I never really got any really help there. And I swore that I would never go back to a church and I was done.
Looking back, and I need to ask about your family too, but I just on the church front, looking back on it, and of course, you've been through this healing process, which we're going to talk about, and this ministry you have now. What do you think they should have done? What's the proper response when a pastor falls and dramatically so in your case, because it wasn't, there's the pastor fall, he's cheating on his wife, right? That's a common one, right? But the pastor falls in this very unusual, he potentially would have raped a woman and a bargain, like a random woman, random happenstance, first offense. That's a very, like, I can see the church being like, what are we dealing with? This is scary. What do you think they should have done?
Well, you don't alleviate the consequences. So I didn't need for them to say, oh, don't worry about it. It's okay. We love you. I didn't need that. I didn't need for them to give me a pity party. What I wanted was someone to say, yeah, you did wrong. We got you though. We're going to work through this with you. And here's what we want you to do. We're going to set up some counseling, and we're going to have some groups for you to get involved. We're going to set up and we're going to have some accountability going on for you. And we're going to help you walk through this restorative process. And that at some point that we want to see you back in the congregation, actually at least being a part of the congregation in a healthy frame, and that people can see your recovery, and that people can see the change. But we want you to have limited access right now to a lot of the people, and we want you to just kind of stay within the group of people that we're going to give you so that you can actually deal and work through the stuff. And so we're keeping it safe for the congregation. So we're not using some stupidity here. And if I was molesting a child, then I would need to go, I would have even a bigger protective bubble around me. And that protective bubble wouldn't mean that I'm in the same congregation as the child. So that means that maybe I might have to go to a sister church or to someone that they can trust.
And sorry to interrupt, but you're saying this is after jail time.
Right.
You're saying,
well, there's a year before jail.
Right. But so for example, if someone, God forbid, abuses a child, right? And they're part of a church, and horribly this happens, right? Are you saying in that situation, it's like, well, you can't go to this church because the kid you abused is here, but you can go to this other church?
No,
because there's
that's
other
not what
kids.
I'm saying.
Okay.
No. What I mean by that, thank you for clarifying, is that they would be, I want them in small group, and that means healthy individuals surrounding them. I want them in a mentoring relationship. I want them in a counseling framework, and maybe that it's severe enough that maybe we get them into a 90-day treatment program or a 6-month treatment program. But they never get back into the church that they offended until he's worked through it with the parents. And then if that child feels safe to have a conversation with a letter to him or whatever, that there's a need for possible restoration. And it doesn't mean restoration with the child. It just means that he's willing to hear what the child has to say and what the parents have to say. So it's impact statements from the victims. And then the impact statement in recovery looks like what the congregation felt, those who had trusted, and what the leaders would say how they were impacted. So if I really want to recover, you can't protect me from the impact. If I'm truly going to recover, I got to know what my actions cost you.
Yeah. I think in the case of a sexual abuse situation with a child, though, you got to go to jail.
Yeah. Oh, there's no doubt.
There's no like talk to the parents of the family. Or
well, there will be at some point, but
you mean after jail?
Yeah, after jail. Yeah. But even if you don't, even if you're in jail for the rest of your life, even let's just say your offenses, there's 20 kids in the congregation that you've harmed, you're going to be in jail for the rest of your life. But there's still, if you're looking at recovering, whether you're in jail or not, you still have to restore and heal yourself. And so having impact statements like letters written, meeting with the parents, or never meeting with the child, that's not necessary because a child should not have to be put under that again. But the idea of having there be the impact of what my actions cost, because what we tend to do is we want to restore somebody without having them ever face the consequences. Not the consequences of their actions, yes, but that's not all. The consequences of how it hurt the other person, the other people. And
you mean in the church?
Church or anyone else.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think about a case that I know of where the grandfather was abusing the granddaughter, and for years, horribly. And he did not end up facing any jail time. Statute of limitations, I think, had passed, and the abuse didn't come out till decades later. And then there was this kind of roundup where everyone talked to each other about it, but it was like there was no justice done.
Right.
And I think that's what is so concerning for people today. It's like, if you don't have justice, how can we really be protecting victims?
Well, not only protecting, but how does the child learn that that was not them, but the person who did it? Mm-hmm. And the justice done helps the child separate out that this wasn't their fault. Mm-hmm. This was punishable by law. This was illegal. This was wrong. This is what the offender did, and they took advantage of my innocence. So it's a help. It's a big help for it isn't the only thing, but it helps the child make it separate out. Is this really me or not? Yeah. Right. And so when we just say, oh, it's okay, then, or, it was wrong, but we're just going to move on. We're just setting the child up to not know the difference between right and wrong. Mm-hmm. And so then they typically get in relationships with men who do the same thing. They abuse them, it hurt them, they mishandle them, mm-hmm. and they just say, oh, well, it's okay. I mean, so they learn that it's okay to be harmed by others in the name of loving. Mm-hmm. It's like they become a Jesus doormat, right? In the name of, and it's wrong. It's just not healthy.
How did your wife respond to you when you told her that you had almost attempted rape?
It blew her away. And it took us, we went to counseling. We did some treatment program stuff. But she never really recovered from it. And truthfully, when I was trying to figure out how to heal, I wasn't the best of the best. There was not any really good help out there, to be honest. And so I was trying different things. I mean, there was Christian groups that were, casting demons into Dixie cups, and you spit in a Dixie cup, and you're being delivered, and crap like that. Excuse me, the language, but it's just terrible. Ideas of just memorize scripture, and you can't have those kind of thoughts at the same time in the same head. Baloney. There was using spiritual disciplines as a way to solve the issue. And spiritual disciplines are absolutely essential for your health and life. Wrong application to the addiction. Mm-hmm. And so the learning of what it means to help someone actually change and heal. So I was going to counselors that were saying, this is who you are. You just accept it, that you're once offender, always an offender. So unless you admit that you're an offender or that you're a sex addict and always a sex addict, then you are walking in denial and you're never going to recover. So there's hopelessness put within the whole frame of what it means to recover. One side wants to give you freedom with no consequences, real or little consequences, and the other side just calling you that this is who you are, you can't change, you never will change, all you can do is modify. And so it's like once an offender, always an offender. So there was no real help. So I committed myself that I was going to learn. I'm going to get through this somehow, and I'm going to learn. And when I learn, I'm going to develop my own stuff. I'm going to help people.
So you didn't, you knew that there had to be some kind of a consequence. You knew that, you were in prison for a month basically, right. And then they let you out on good behavior, it sounds like. But then you didn't want to have this identity of sex addict, sex offender. You wanted to be free.
Right.
And so, but there were no resources that you could find that were guiding on this path. And then meanwhile, your wife is just fed up. She's just like, this is so broken. What was the dynamic going on at that point?
Well,
because a lot of women today would just pack up the bags that night. Like, this guy, I don't know what I'm dealing with. Before he would have sex with me, kind of against my will. Again, I don't want to put words into your mouth, fine. But I don't know if that's the correct. I'm going to back on that if that's not the correct view. Like, would she have said that herself?
I would say that she would. I would say that she would say that. I would, and I also, like I said to you, that there wasn't really good help out there. And I was making poor choices. I was still going back. I was still making unhealthy choices. I still was going back to the clubs off and on. I was still going to pornography off and on, even when I said I'm going to recover. So I was trying to figure out how to change, and I was finding myself falling short. Mm-hmm. And I'd get back up and I'd try again. And so I could say that I recovered very roughly. It took me a long time. It took me several years, almost a decade, to get to a place where I go, oh, This is what recovery really looks like. And I began to, once I got my hands on understanding my mind around what it took, then I could do the work. And then the work actually made a difference.
So this was 10 years after 29. So your entire 30s.
Yeah.
And was your wife with you this whole time, or did she stayed with you?
Mm-hmm. 27 years of marriage. And she just walked out. And I don't blame her. I'm not here to say, oh, wow, she's a jerk. She left. No, I think the more sober I got, the more I realized the impact of my actions. So in the moment while I was still living with her, I wasn't really aware of how much I was harming and how much of a mess I was in. And she was in a more codependent framework of, oh, well, I love him, I'm going to stay in this. So she was letting things go. And so I would say to you that I was still a mess for the first 10 years. Yeah.
So after you got out of prison, your church kind of ostracizes you, and you are still at this point, you're like, I want to get clean. And so you're kind of talking to the therapist or doing different things, but you end up keep on continuing to fall back into patterns of sex addiction. So you're going to brothels or seeing prostitutes, you're looking at pornography.
Yep. Thing is that there's a difference in that those 10 years. The first year of when I got arrested, and then I went to jail and spent my time, and then when I got out, I was like, I'm never walking back into a church. I'm done with Christianity. I'm done with all of this. And I was pretty much seeing myself as a victim. So that's telling you that I'm not recovering. If I'm seeing myself as a victim, and yes, there was victimhood in my world, and I needed to address that, but I didn't know that. I just saw everything that happened to me as it's their fault. They're mishandling me. So everything was about them and not about me. So as we're talking about this, the mentality of me then was it's everybody else's fault, and they're not handling me well. So I had everybody to blame and not taking any ownership myself. And a year into this, after I got out, there's this pastor in Orange County. It's no longer here. He died of cancer, and so he's been gone for a while. But he was like he was a part of a really powerful church, and he was kind of like a mentor for me since high school. Every once in a while, he'd touch base with me. I lived 3 hours away from him. But he would come to church camps, or he'd come to a retreat, or he'd speak at a conference. And so I knew there was something about him that was different, but I couldn't put my fingers on it. So I was always interested in talking to him, but I never really opened this stuff up to him because I wasn't close enough to really actually do so. So when this all came out in the open, he didn't know. And he lived 3 hours away, so he kept he didn't know. And so for about a year, we hadn't talked. And we were talking at least every week, every month. And so he calls me up and finally gets me. And he says, I haven't heard from you in a long time. What's up? Are you okay? And I said, yeah, I'm doing great. I was lying through my teeth. And he just said, well, I really want you to come down and spend time with me. And I thought, well, I haven't. I can't just say no. So I went ahead and agreed to come. And so on my way down, I'm thinking I'll talk about the Dodgers. I'll talk about the weather. I'll talk about this. I'll talk about that. I'm not talking about anything serious. And I get into his office, and he's one of those guys that you just can't lie to. Not really. When I sit down face to face to him, he just said, I've had you on my heart, and I know something's up with you. So what's going on? And that question right there, I just vomited literally everything. I told childhood stuff. I didn't even know the connections to childhood stuff other than I just told all of the stuff, everything that I had stuffed inside, I just put it on the table. And he just sat there, and it was probably a couple hours, maybe more. And I had snot running, and then my eyes were I was a mess. And when I got done, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what did I just do? I just ruined my last and only relationship. And he gets up from behind his desk, And he walks around and there's no way out of this room. I'm stuck. It's either I got to push him out of the way or I don't know what to do. And so I stand up with my fist clenched because he's moving towards me, and I'm standing up with my fist clenched, and I'm thinking if he does anything like everybody else has done, I'm going to deck him. I was so angry inside. And he just comes up and he just gives me this wrestler's hug. And the wrestler's hug just is the one that just doesn't let go. It's going to take you down if he wanted to. So he's got me in this wrestler's hug, and he just leaned his face into my neck. And he just started weeping. I just told him my worst. I just told him, I didn't give anything to the elders and they about killed me. And here he's just taking this whole thing and he's weeping. And I was water running down my neck. I felt the tears. And he just said, I'm so sorry that you've never tasted God's heart toward your struggles. I want you to know that God loves you and we're going to get through this. And I'm going to help you. I'm here to support you. Now, he had a congregation of probably 2,000 people. And so he had no room for time, but he took time weekly. I drove 3 hours down and 3 hours back weekly to see him, and had the biggest messes, and he didn't quit. He didn't know how to give me the tools to change. He had some great principles, but what he did know is he loved me well. And he never condoned what I did. He didn't say, hey, it's okay, no big deal what you've done. He didn't wrap his mind around and say, or wrap his arms around and say, hey, I see what you did, no big deal. No, he just said, but I see who you are, and I want you to know that that's who I'm going to help you get back to. So even though his actions didn't change the struggle completely, it's something inside shattered that said that I'm no good. Something broke. And I can say for the first time in my life and being in church all those years that I actually felt loved because I was seen. All the stuff's on the table and he's embracing me. And that gave me the will to change. And so I put my mind to trying things, and I really did try, and I would fall or make mistakes.
What did that look like, Gene, when you say you would try? Like, I'm going to go cold turkey, no porn for the next month?
Yeah, cold turkey. But I would also, it would be, I would go to counseling, and I still was tripping up. Counseling, meaning church counseling. I would, see the elders, and that didn't work very well. And I went to a group that was considered, it was kind of like a bondage breaker kind of scenario. So there was they're dealing with bondage and the whole idea of prayer and memorization of scripture and casting out demons and all that kind of stuff. And Bible memorization, all that was the first elements of trying to change. And it wasn't until I attended a workshop here in Orange County that I'm trying to remember the name of the church. I think it was Metro or something like that, but they did a sexual trauma seminar. And that sexual trauma seminar, I took my wife to, because I'm thinking she needs help. I took her there, but I went there as a support.
How far in the marriage were you at this point? This was before the rape attempt?
After the rape.
And so you think that, so that mindset of, were you still keeping it all, like in your mind, was it like, I didn't actually try to hurt that woman, I was never going to actually do anything? Like what was your own narrative about yourself at that point?
I saw myself as a scumbag. I saw myself as a pervert. I saw myself as that I don't know if I can change. I really started losing hope because no matter how much I tried, and I did try, I did put everything into it, but it wasn't working. I'll give you a visual if I can of, have you ever done a piñata? Okay. So you get the blindfold on, you got the baseball bat, you got all the power in the world to knock the snot out of that whatever that is, well, that animal or stuffed animal or whatever it is, and you swing with everything you got, and it isn't making an impact. So you step back and you go, I'll get it this time. And you keep doing it, and you keep doing it. And each time you do it, you start losing a little bit more hope. And the thing is that when somebody would come finally says, take off the blindfold. Now I see what I'm fighting. Now my swings count. And so I would say in my first part of my recovery, I didn't know what I was swinging at. I couldn't see. And it was when I started getting some real help. And so that was a Jan Frank, who wrote a book called A Door of Hope. And she shared her own personal testimony of the impact of sexual abuse. And up to that moment, I had no clue that the sexual abuse that I experienced had any connection to what I was doing.
Even when you were taking your wife to trauma therapy for her sexual abuse?
No.
Did you and your wife ever talk, hey, I was sexually abused, you were sexually abused? Did you ever have a conversation?
No.
Did she know that you had been sexually abused, your wife? You never told her?
No.
Who was the first person you told that you were sexually abused?
That conference, that sexual abuse conference. Jan Frank's story.
That you had taken your wife to.
Right. It was that story that had similarities. And I saw the parallels.
What about the guy, though, from the other pastor from OC?
So,
and you poured out your heart to him. Had you told him about the sexual abuse?
I didn't tell him too much about that because I didn't see the relevance. I mean, I did it in passing, but quite frankly, he didn't either. So back in the, you're looking 40 years ago, we didn't have there was very little knowledge about how sexual abuse connected to sexual acting out. So now we have a ton of information out there. And so we all kind of have some kind of basis for knowledge. But Jan Frank was the first one that opened my eyes. And it was her perceptions of what sexual abuse does that I'm going, holy crap, this is hitting me between the eyeballs. It isn't that I'm some kind of a pervert. Yes, I've done wrong things, and yes, I deserve punishment, and yes, I've made a big mess of my life and others' lives. But man, this is the first time that somebody is like giving me a fresh breath of air as to how sexual abuse plays a role in what I'm doing. So the sexual abuse was huge. But then in that same conference, there's this guy, his name was Ray Jones. And Ray Jones was this, he did, I forget what they call it, sexual deviant behavior specialist. And so I'm thinking, wow, that's a big title. But I sit down and listen to his workshop, and he hit me between the eyes. Like, I've been in tons of workshops. Nobody was touching my stuff. This guy did. So between Jan Frank and him, it's like my whole world opened up. And I began to say, wow, the driver to my behavior there are many roots to it. One is sexual abuse, right? And the other one is the sexualization of the pornography and the sexually acting out. And then I learned a little bit later in that day, there was a guy named Gordon Dalby. And Gordon Dalby was a guy that dealt with father wounding and the impact of when you're empty from not feeling connected and not knowing what it means to be a man and starting to look ways to fill the void. And so I saw 3 core things that actually were what I needed to work on. I go, those things make sense. And so I started digging in. I started going to her workshops and her conferences. We started going to counseling with her. I went to counseling with Ray Jones, started reading his materials, started going to his workshops. And then I started going to Gordon Dalby's workshops and started reading his books. And so that was the journey that actually started me on the track to heal. And behaviors started changing as I started looking at what was driving them. And so it made a big difference when I actually saw what it is I'm fighting.
What was the behavior that changed once you start to have this sense of connecting your behavior to these deeper wounds and habits?
Well, let's just use, for instance, Gordon Dalby talks about the male wound and the lack of father in the life. And and the lack of connection there. The fact that I was looking for connection in all the wrong place. There's nothing wrong with looking for connection, because that is a need to be affirmed as a man, and to understand what it means to be a man, and to walk in a healthy community of men, where there's bonding and there's mentorship and there's a sense of healthy masculinity. And then in that was the idea of, when you have sexual abuse, the impact of that it sexualizes my needs. It also causes me to have shame around sex. So sex is done in secret. Sexual behaviors get strange and weird based upon the pain that I'm carrying. My pain gets acted out sexually. And so the idea that how the impact of sexual wounding got played out in my world was, anger. And so when I was sexually abused as a child, I realized how much rage I had from the sexual abuse, how much anger I had. But you know where that went? Before, it went towards me. So my rage and my anger didn't go out here. Mm-hmm. It went in towards me. And when I have that much rage and anger, so then where does that go? Well, it goes out towards women, because women started the wounding. And so my anger and my pain and my shame, the things I was doing to women was coming from what happened to me. Now, there's no excuse. You don't get to blame that on the things I did, but it helps me understand what drives it. And if I don't change that, it doesn't change. No matter time, no matter what I said, I'm stopping. I'm never doing it again. I don't like it. I don't like what it's doing in me. I want to change it. It doesn't change by just trying to stop it. You got to get to the roots. You got to understand what drives it. It's the why. It's what is the source to this. And my understanding now, as I look back 40 some years now, 44 years to be exact, of working on recovery and healing, and then developing my own system to help people, is I understand that there are three basic things that drive a problem. And whether it's sex addiction, food addiction, alcoholism, doesn't matter, gambling, whatever, there's always driven by two basic things, is that I'm using the mood altering experience to cover pain. So the level of pain I'm carrying is the stronger I need the drug is because I'm carrying more pain. So the more pain I carry, the stronger drug I need, and the more drug I need. So what I'm doing is I'm numbing out. I'm using the drug to numb pain. I'm not working through pain. I'm just keep covering it with addiction, mood altering experiences. So I'm hiding pain, unresolved pain. And number two is I have unmet needs, legitimate God-given needs. I need to feel connected. I need to feel known. I need to feel like I'm loved and I'm treasured, I'm wanted. And those are legit. Mm-hmm. But the sex abuse, the damage done is that all of those needs got met through sex. Sex doesn't meet those needs. That's not what sex is for. And to the idea that I was using those things, sex, to meet unhealthy or real needs in an unhealthy way. So it's learning how to meet those needs. What are those needs? And then learning new strategies to meet those needs. And there's no shame around having those needs. And to be able to identify them and to look at new strategies rather than going to the default. The default, which is go to sex for everything. Sex does that. Solves that. So all my needs got sexualized.
I hear often that term that sex is a need. It's a very modern idea. Like people just need sex.
Right.
And it's used to justify all kinds of things, including premarital sexual activity, certainly masturbation, all these things. And the reality is, no, you don't. People can be celibate.
Right.
We need love.
Right.
We need human touch.
Right.
We need human connection. When was that aha moment for you? Sounds like you're in a period where it says that mindset of Jean saying, I need sex. And in your marriage, it meant you could have this dimension with your wife where it's just like, I want you to do this for me, even though she's not even wanting it. She's suffering.
Right.
When did that switch for you to say, I'm not, first of all, I'm not entitled to it. And then second of all, I don't even need it?
Well, I think when you I think for me, when you ask me, is when I started tasting, when I recognized that I had these needs and I started moving towards new strategies to meet those needs. And all of a sudden, the energy level that it brings, the awareness that it brings, the it's like my eyes get opened and it's like, oh, I don't want that. I want this. And so the strategy for helping anybody change is that it's not about stopping something. It's about becoming something. So what I needed to know is that I was worth something. And that needed to happen more than anything. And that's the shame aspect. So there was three. It was the pain, the need, and the shame. I needed to address the shame. And the shame is the false identity. Shame says you are what happened to you.
You are a pedophile.
You are
a
pedophile,
rapist.
right.
You are a sex offender.
So I can't recover in an environment that says the first thing they ask you to do in a group is say, hi, I'm G. McConnell. I am a perpetrator. Hi, I'm G. McConnell. I am a sex addict.
So that's part of the 12 steps, right?
Yeah.
It's born out of that. So like, hi, I'm an alcoholic and I can't do anything. I'm powerless to stop being an alcoholic.
Right.
So it sounds like you totally disagree with that framework.
Well, I disagree with that element.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, because there's plenty of people who get help from it. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not in any way, shape, or form discounting anyone's recovery. Because you can get recovery from a lot of things that doesn't have to be completely accurate. But the problem that created in that world is that everybody in that room stays stuck in that element of who they are, because it's saying that your struggle is your identity. And it may sound like a really simple thing and it's just being ridiculous, but the scriptures teach that as a man believes in his heart, so is he. Mm. So you're believing that the whole sum of your life is that's you, that I'm an addict, that I'm a sex addict. And that's baloney. I wasn't created an addict. There's so much to me than that. And what helps me recover is when I discover there's something more to me than my shame. Mm. There's something more to me than my messes, that I am meant for more. There's purpose. I'm designed with reason, and it's not to say, this is me. Now, I don't believe that denial works either. So that means, well, if I don't say that, then how do I admit? Well, it goes something like this. I'm G. McConnell. I struggle with sex addiction. I'm G. McConnell. I struggle with a sexual perversion. Or, hi, I'm G. McConnell. I struggle with alcohol. You hear the difference. Mm-hmm. I'm recognizing I'm struggling. I'm recognizing it's a journey, but it's not my identity. And I can't say that thing strong enough, because when I help people, one of my primary roles is to restore dignity first before we ever take on the harder things. Why? Because if you get your dignity back, if you get a picture of who you are, and a taste of that.
Who God made you to be.
Who God made you to be. He didn't make a mistake when he made you. The debris has just covered it. So we want honesty not to say, oh, look at all this bad stuff so that you are this big mess. Look at all this. No. The honesty is meant to help remove the stuff so that you can actually see who you really are underneath all that. So the purpose of light is not to reveal your brokenness. The purpose of light is to reveal your dignity. Hmm. So yes, the brokenness comes first because it's in the way. So you remove the brokenness one piece at a time, but that's not the end of the story. The light is meant to expose your value. It's meant to expose your purpose, that you are meant for more than what you're living. And that is when people recover. When people recognize there's more to me than this mess, then I'm going to fight for that. And the more I help them grow that, at the same time that muscle's getting built and heart is getting built and there's a connection to purpose, now they have the energy to take on the hard. But if I say, this is all there is to you, it's all this hard stuff, and I'm saying this is who you are, that's hopelessness. That's not who you are. What, is that the end of my battle? This is just admitting that I am this mess? No. No, not at all. If I wouldn't be sitting here today if all there was to me is everything I had done.
What would you be doing, do you think?
Oh my gosh, I'd still be in the mess. So I really would be, because if you don't see yourself more than your mess, you'll always be your mess. Because you always walk out your core beliefs. If you believe you're nothing more than an addict, then that's what you will be.
Did you, when you were having this realization of that's not who I am, the woundedness of your childhood, the unmet needs, understanding these patterns of behavior that you are just stuck in again and again and again, can you share what happened with your marriage?
Unfortunately, what happens in a lot of times when people start recovering and one of them does and the other one kind of stays stuck in their stuff, then the relationship ends up breaking up. And to be honest, I did so much damage. I don't blame my ex-wife for walking away. I get it. I betrayed her way beyond anything that she should have ever accepted. But she was so stuck in that, the pain of what had happened to her, and also the pain of what I did to her, because I lived out her worst fears. And so she was still stuck there, and she couldn't move.
So are you saying there was a period of time where you got healthy, you're in recovery, you got healthy, you were not cheating on her, you were not being unfaithful, you're actually doing it, and that's when the marriage fell apart. Mm-hmm. It's like the marriage stayed not strong, but the marriage was lasting through your infidelities and your betrayals. And then when you actually stop infidelity and betrayal, that's when it's like she woke up and she said, I can't do this anymore.
Right.
And so at that juncture, you're having this whole experience of really just transformation for yourself, of a new gene that you didn't know was possible before. When did you start to connect that to, okay, now I got to help other men?
It's funny. I've been doing it from the day one when I started walking. Even in my biggest messes, guys would hear me talk about my story, and they go, "Well, obviously you're one step ahead of me. Can you help?" And even though I didn't know diddly squat about anything other than the fact that I got to talk about this, I was trying to help men way back.
They just came out of the woodwork.
Yeah, it just came out of the woodwork.
And you would say you would tell them your story. You would tell them a story about the conviction for attempted assault. Mm-hmm. And that was what just got men talking to you, like, oh, I have this struggle, or I have this. Because they thought, oh, if he's being public about that, I can go to him and tell him my worst secrets.
The darndest thing about this is that I would prefer never to go back and talk about this. I'd just rather just bury it and move on. But what happens every time I do is it pulls back the curtains enough to say, hey, if he can do it and he's alive and he's thriving, so can I. And so I do this because it actually provides a trail for those who don't think there's a possibility of change. Because I know what it's like to be in that hole. It ain't pretty. And most of the men that are stuck there don't believe there's any real good to them. And so every time I go there with my story, doesn't matter what level I go to, that authenticity breeds authenticity. And grace and mercy and healing and restoration breeds the same. So, and when I go to my story, the one thing that I want communicated more than anything else is that there's nothing beyond the cross. Nothing. The only thing that holds us up is our willingness to be open. The one step that we have in our recovery, the one step is to come into the light, because God is light, and in him there's no shadows, there's no darkness, there's no hiding, there's no pretending, there's no half-ass. God is in the open. He is in the light. So light and truth are the same. They're synonymous. So I have to be a man who pursues truth and openness. And if I do that with, I'm trying to get the right language, that sanity is that it is the idea that I am completely given and committed to being a man of the light. Not about, forget the behavior, forget the problems that you're struggling with. If I come to the light, he is faithful and just to forgive me of my sin and to cleanse me from all unrighteousness. And it sets the tone for me to have the architect of light begin to work. God works in the light. So I can't heal what I hide. I can't heal what's hidden. So if I think that God's going to recover me while I'm still staying secret, not going to happen. It takes the courage and strength to step into the open and to get into the light. And what you bring to the light, God's promises to rebuild what you bring. So what I do with my story is I say, here's my story. Here's as honest as I can be. And look at the mess I created. And if God can take that, then he can do it in you too. And so, I mean, there's no pleasure in bringing this to this table. It's hard. In fact, the movie that we'll talk about is so hard for me to even see myself on the screen. It hurts. It's painful to see.
Buying her, the movie.
Buying her, because it has my story weaved throughout the film. And it's painful to see and hear me talk about that mindset that I was in before and to actually put that out in the open. And it just makes me cringe, makes me struggle. And yet it's crazy how God uses it. It's just crazy. So I'm learning the most important principle for recovery and mental health is to live my life in the light, to pursue what is true in me.
To tell the truth.
To tell the truth. And even if I don't know what is true, I'm in pursuit of truth. And that will help me more than anything else because it's the truth will set you free. It's knowing what is true that brings freedom. And I don't want mediocrity in my thinking. I want health. And so it means the pursuit of what is true. And even if it costs me, in my mind, everything, I gain the whole world. Actually, I don't lose at all. I only lose the things that are hurting me when I come into the light. It's really the lie of the enemy that says, if you do this, you lose everything. No, if you do this, you gain everything. And you lose the things that are holding you back. So it's that lie that holds most in bondage. So I know that coming into the light is everything.
How can family members, if they have a suspicion that their husband, their boyfriend, their son, and again, there can be women involved here too, maybe it's their daughter, but we're talking largely about a man's experience, and they have a suspicion that they're in some sort of a sex addiction or some compulsive sexual activity or disordered, dangerous, deviant sexual activity, whatever it is. How do you recommend family members talk to or try to connect with this other family member that they love, that they're worried about?
Man, I wish there was a one thing that could handle it, because there's so many different variances in personality and so forth. But the one thing that I can say that it kind of comes in line with what we were just saying, that getting it into the open, getting it out in the open. So what causes the problem to continue is when there is enabling behavior, which means I can't talk. I don't want to hurt my husband. I don't want to disrespect him. I don't want to cause him shame. I'm just going to keep this silent, and we'll just pray together, and we'll pray that God works this out. And
I'm going to put my head in the sand.
I'm going to put my hand in the sand.
Maybe I suspect something, but it's too painful, too scary, too crazy. I'm not going to go there.
Right. And then when you do bring it to the table, he gaslights you. He said, you're being ridiculous. You're being over controlling. You're being, too religious, whatever. He's going to attack. He's going to come after you, because he's fighting for his life. See, that's the thing we don't get, is the reason why he gets that way is because he's trying to protect what he believes is the end of him. So he's not going to give that to you. And so the thing that helps us is that when people quit doing the dance and saying no, the boundaries are there. I love you and I want you in my life, but to have you in my life, there's no secrets. And to have you in my life is there's no going to the clubs. Or if I have you in my life, there's no doing things separate.
So it's a boundary, you're saying.
It's
learning
how to set boundaries, not to control, but to actually define who you are.
But sorry to interrupt, but it's not a boundary unless you're willing to walk away.
Right.
And move out.
And it's not a boundary.
And I'm not saying divorce per se, because I don't believe in divorce in terms of reject your first marriage and remarry. I believe if it's a real marriage, it's a marriage, and then you may live separately to protect yourself or your kids or whatever. Now you can also look back on your marriage and see, was it a real marriage? Because sometimes there's deceit or other mitigating circumstances. So maybe you annul that because you realize it wasn't even a marriage. Anyways, I'm getting into sort of details here, but for family members, especially if we're talking about the wife or particularly the wife in this situation, you're saying set a boundary. Don't be a doormat. Right. Don't let it continue under your roof. Well, she can only do so much.
Right.
And what if he's the economic he's the breadwinner. She's got kids. What does that woman do?
Well, I mean, if she actually does the steps well, it doesn't matter whether he's a breadwinner or not. She can actually be covered and taken care of. And we could go down that rabbit trail, but I can say to you this, that she has a better chance of living life what she wants when she's real and being honest and setting boundaries than being a doormat. And doormat meaning I'm just going to let him do whatever he wants to do, no matter what it costs me, because I want this relationship to work. And so as long as he has no consequences, he won't change. The consequences is the first step to realize, oh, this isn't working.
What is the consequence you recommend?
Well, if I had a cut on my finger, okay, so I might put a bandage on it or a Band-Aid. And if it gets worse, I might do some infection stuff on it, like spray or cream, and then I might wrap it up more. But and maybe if it gets worse, I go to a doctor. But what I'm saying there is you have levels of consequences based on the severity of the issue. You certainly could cut the finger off and deal with the cut, right? But that's too severe to do at the stages. But if that cut becomes something at the risk of the whole body, then that finger has to go. So the question mark is, well, how severe is this? Mm. And so I would say that it gets severe when we don't do what we call increment steps towards having consequences. And it would look something like, a boundary is defining who you are, not controlling another person. So if I set a boundary to control him, then it's only going to come across as I'm just controlling.
Well, and you can't control him.
You can't control him. But if I set a boundary the boundary is a fence line that says this is who I am, and that means what I love, what matters to me, what I hate, what are my values, what I believe in.
I mean, I think a lot of these women, the boundary is, and I know some of these stories, the boundary is, I'm not going to have sex with you because you are chronically cheating on me. It might not even be safe for me to physically have sex with you.
Right.
But then what's often happens in these dynamics is the man says, well, all the more reason why I'm going to go do, like, why are you judging me so hard? Like, you look at you, it's all on you. It's your fault, your fault, your fault. And then that there's this toxic downward spiral that they find themselves in.
So instead of it carrying this where it's her fault for the problem, the setting the boundary is half of that is communicating that boundary, and then setting consequences that are adequate for the offense. So being able to say, I love you, I want this relationship to work, but I'm not willing to share you with other people. I'm not willing to have pornography in our world, or I'm not willing for you to go and go out with these other women. Or it could be a more simple as, I don't want you going out to dinner alone with another woman, or I don't want you, here I'm going. She's setting that boundary based on what she feels and her values and what it matters. And what she would do is say, you have a choice. To love me is to understand and respect what I value. So you have a choice. I'm saying that if you continue down that path, you're choosing to move away from me. Mm. I'm not walking away from you. You're walking away from me. And if you choose to do those things again and not get help, then you're choosing it. You're not choosing us. What I want for us to do is to go to some counselor together and let's get some counseling advice and let's look at how the two of us can actually build this and work this. If you don't want counseling, you're choosing, you hear what I'm saying? You're putting it back on in his court to say, you're choosing or not health to stay or not. Here's what it looks like to be healthy. I want you to go to counseling. I want us to go to counseling together. I want us to do a season of sobriety sexually because you've been with other women, and I need you to get some testing done to see if you're carrying a disease. And I need to know that you have some sobriety sexually before we come back together in the bed. And so but you do that with a counselor. You do that with somebody that can provide a good set of advice and come alongside of, and him having accountability for the messes that he's creating. She has every right to stand up for what she wants. The key in it is you're saying, if you want this relationship to work, I do. Then you will do this. But if you don't, you're choosing. If you don't do this, you're choosing. Not me. I'm here. I want to work this out. You're choosing not to. So you're putting it back because he's going to look at blaming her he's going to put it all on her. He's going to gaslight her and all that.
That's usually the story that we find. And often I find, the large majority of the anecdotal cases I've heard, which is maybe in the dozens now, if not more, is it doesn't work. I mean, because he's locked in. He's locked into these cycles. She needs a boundary. She creates one and she leaves, or he leaves, before she leaves. But they part ways ultimately. And then, of course, if there's kids in the mix, it's all the more dangerous and traumatic for them too. Have you seen? So you've worked now with hundreds of men over the last few decades. Have you seen recovery?
Absolutely.
And have you seen healed marriages?
Yes.
And how have you seen that take place? What are the core steps? You mentioned some of them earlier, but what do you see happening? What are the key things that have to happen?
So there's a couple in my mind, so no names or any of that stuff, but I'm just giving that she was the one who was walking out on him. So there's an affair going on. And the thing is that what you do with that is you get the two to come together and they tell their stories, talk about what's going on. So there's a season of collection of story information because one size does not fit all. And for me to give you a prescription, so to speak, and a system in place without hearing your story, except for just knowing what's happened on the outside. Oh, you had an affair. Here's what you do. No, you got to sit and hear what's going on and what's her story, what's his story. And then you got to bring them together and say, what's your story together? And so you're doing a more holistic frame rather than doing a Band-Aid. And so we don't take it as this is just do a quick fix here. You want to really dig in and work. And during that season, if there's been an affair like that and it's an ongoing thing, there has to be thing with that person saying, you need to cut that off. And you need to stop it and to then look at why you were going there. And it isn't because of him or it isn't because of her. That's not why. There's much deeper than that. You're using that as an excuse. You're telling yourself a story that makes everybody think that you have a reason for going there. So we always tell ourselves stories so we can legitimize our mistakes. So we help the two of them separate, get their stories together, and maybe even do a legal separation or a temporary separation so that there's focus on self, personal development, and then coming back and then talking about to the couple how they come back together and then give them some basic foundational core principles in terms of conflict resolution, boundaries, listening, responding to each other, and just the basic foundational relational health tools and forgiveness and reconciliation, and not just saying forgive, but to actually work through the forgiveness process, which means it takes sometimes 6 months to a year to work through forgiveness. And it's if it's a deep wound, there's no quick fix. And then what does it mean to reconcile? And so all of those things are key. And I've got tons of stories that have walked through that process. And then I have others who did not walk through the process and he just gave up. And so you can't say everybody can recover I can say everybody can recover if they're willing to do the work. But there are those who say, no, this is just too daggum hard. I want to start over.
Is that typically the man actually, or would you say half the time it's the
goes
woman?
both.
It's just, it depends on the couple.
Totally.
And sometimes they're just, one of them or neither of them want to even do the work. It's just, they're not, it's too daunting, too painful.
The typical thing for when marriages are in a tough spot is the guy usually goes to porn, or he goes to a club, or, prostitution or whatever, or he gets into an affair. The female has to have a sense. Most of them don't just jump. There's a lot of people. There are some women who are doing the same thing as men do, is they just jump from relationship to relationship with no connection. But what many women are doing is looking for a man who will listen, who hears her story, respects her, gives her time. She feels treasured. She feels like she matters. And so she's looking for that, and it actually grows into something more. And she doesn't recognize until her heart's already there that she's got another man in her world just doing everything her husband's not. And that's the hard thing to turn around. Right? And so that I find that the hardest piece, because when she finds somebody that actually has given her what her longings are in the moment that she's always had, and the marriage has never been there, or has moved away from that, then it actually sets her up for trouble. But the one I'm thinking about, she did some really hard work, and she faced it, and they worked through all of it, and their marriage is amazing. I cannot.
God.
This is 5 years later, and I cannot believe how well they're doing.
I want to ask you, and I obviously want you to tell people how they can get in, watch Buying Her and learn about Exodus Cry. But I want to ask you about one more thing. We were talking about this before we got into this conversation on the podcast, and it's very controversial, but I think it is also sort of in our culture today, and myself, I've been very open about this, how contemptible child sexual abuse is, how horrific it is, and how child sexual abusers, I think, are not held high enough accountable in our culture. I know stories of sexual offenders who are, consuming child sexual assault material and like trying to make arrangements to meet with children to abuse them, and they get a slap on the wrist. They maybe get a 3-year prison sentence and it's commuted to 18 months or something, and then they're out in public, and who knows about any rehabilitation. I mean, often there are repeat offenders. You used that term earlier about getting that label of you're an offender, you're a sex offender, repeat offender. Often they are repeat offenders. You hear these horror stories. What is your view of especially how we should look at pedophiles in our culture?
Right.
I think that, there's some in the conservative space, especially saying death to pedophiles. If you commit one offense as a pedophile, you should just get the death penalty right away. Can pedophiles be rehabilitated in your view?
Yeah.
And whatever else you want to share on that topic.
So let me separate it out a little bit. So you have a pedophile is somebody who's committed to the lifestyle and believes that they're loving and helping the child, and they don't see anything wrong with what they're doing. They think that their actions are truly nurturing and loving the child. Pedophile is really hardcore, this is good. So pedophile is much more difficult to change than a molester. And there's a big difference between those two. So someone who has molested a child, there's one you call a situational molester, which in the moment of bad pressure, a situation comes and whatever, and they're opportunistic, yep. And they do it. It's a one-time shot, and they are sorry about it, and they wish they'd have never done it again, and that's it. And then you have the one who sees himself. And this is the one that's more typical, is the one who sees himself emotionally at the age that they're molesting. And this one is the bigger one to address. And it's the one that is more redeemable, because they're still they still can change. They still don't have the full thinking that I am, this is who I am. So I'll come back to that thing in a moment, because there's a political movement that wants to say that the pedophile is just born that way.
Yeah.
And we'll go there in a minute, but I want to stay on this.
Yeah.
So what we find is that when there's some kind of violence or harm done to the man or the woman, because there are molesters on both men and women,
Like your babysitter.
right? So that when they see themselves as the age of when they were harmed. So in other words, something happens that causes them to emotionally shut down in the moment. So if that was at 6 years old, for instance, they're stunted there emotionally. Not every other part of their life, just inside emotionally, they're stunted. And what that means is they see themselves, their emotional self, still at 6, 7, 5. So they are attracted to kids that age. So they have an appetite to be loved and to care for and to nurture, quote unquote, that age. So
And love for them is sexualized.
sexualized. It's sexualized.
Do you think that's the case? I mean, I don't know if you know the case with your babysitter,
Yeah. I believe that's true. I don't know her story.
but that she was sexually abused maybe around that age.
There's no question.
Oh, you think so?
I think so. She was sexualized. There's no question. She was highly sexual. Kids don't grow up with that.
Yeah.
They don't come. That is not in closeness. Doesn't have sex connected to it. When sex gets connected to children's activity, it's because somebody got sexualized and now they're acting out on all the others. What happened to them? So I don't have any question that that's the case. Like the person who molested me at 9 found out that he was being molested by a priest who was supposed to be counseling him through the family through what was happening to them. So he was acting on me, what was happening to him. And that is a common thread throughout the stories. And so for me to go, you're a molester, I would say more like, you know what? No, you're not. You're a young man hurt and you passed on the same damage to me that was done to you. So obviously I was angry at the time and I had to be confronting him later in life. I confronted him and we worked through it.
Wow.
And he owned it. And
you got in touch with the older boy who had molested you at 9.
Yep.
And you guys had a conversation.
Yep. And we're friends now.
Wow.
Yeah. And they see what's interesting in that. I don't want to go too far down that track, but what to see his tears and the pain he had for what happened, what he did to me. And then after we worked through that, he said, are you curious as to what was going on in me? And I said, well, absolutely. And he said, he told the story and I had tears for that. And so my heart moved from anger to empathy because I saw that he was a little boy too. Somebody took advantage of his innocence. And in a time of need, somebody took advantage of him. And so I don't see it the same. Does it lessen the fact that he hurt me? No, absolutely not. And he owned that. But at the same time, my heart has room for, that's what happens when you start healing, is your heart moves from anger and resentment and bitterness to a place of empathy and compassion and forgiveness. Yeah. But it didn't do without him owning it. So anyhow, come back to this. The molester needs to work through, because every time that all sex offender stuff, it makes me so stinking mad. Sorry. It just infuriates me because they want them to own their stuff and to see what they've done to the child, and they want to punish them to the hilt, and they're not looking at what happened. And so all they're doing is asking them to jump through hoops to make everybody happy, but they're not really addressing what was going on in him. Why did he do what he do? Does it make it any less, does it justify what he went through so that he did this? No, but it helps us not only understand what happened, but to actually arrest it so it doesn't happen again. Because molesters, once they molest, they can say that they get up to 50 victims before the first time ever being caught.
Wow.
And a molester can have 300 to 400 victims in their lifetime. And so
A child molester.
A child molester. And so then you want to arrest that, not just punish them. Punishment is important. Don't get me wrong.
I think that's where most people would say, put them in jail. Put them in jail, like politely, like don't torture them. Throw away the key.
Right.
I think that's what a lot of people would say, because there's a repeat molestation that seems to occur.
Yeah, but you can't legislate or arrest away the problem. Do you realize how many kids are molested? Think about this for just talk openly for a minute. 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 5 to 7 boys will be sexually assaulted before the age of 18. How many children is that?
Millions.
And every child that's molested has a potential of re-molesting. So how many is that? So are we going to throw every junkin' one in the jail and throw away the key? We ain't going to have enough prisons for it. I'm not saying that everybody's a molester, because it's not true, but there is a ton out there under the scenes, under the radar.
Meaning you're saying there's a lot of molesting that's happening that we're not detecting.
No, we're not knowing, not until later. No, they die and finally find out, or they never talk about it ever. My grandma, before she died, she said, I was molested. She says, but I will go to my grave and never tell who did it. I'm going, holy crap. Grandma, that's
why? What was her reasoning? Did she say?
She just said that it's disrespectful
of the person who molested her.
Right. And so we never knew. We never know. We'll never know. And the thing is that she went to her grave holding that. And the thing I want to get to is that if we can arrest that, if we can turn that around, and I have tons of stories where that's true. And
turning around.
So that they're not molesting children.
Turning around people that have committed sexual molestation of a child.
Right.
But you're saying they are redeemable.
Yes.
And you're able to, with the right recovery program, they're able to be rehabilitated.
Exactly. I'd say that most systems out there are terrible and they don't work. And we want to know why they keep going back and they never get help. It's mostly because they're not giving them good help, to be honest. I know when I went through it, and it wasn't my molesting. I never molested a child. I never touched a child. So it wasn't my thing, but it doesn't make me holier than them. It just means that mine's different. And that fact that when I was trying to go through the system, and the level of shame and the level of punish in the name of trying to bring healing, that we just shame them and we just punish them, and thinking that we can punish, legislate, and throw them in jail and it'll all just go away. No, they go to jail and then they talk to other molesters and then they learn how to do it better the next time.
Meaning more secretive.
More secretive. And then, I guess I'll just take one more topic that goes into this, and that is the child porn. So child pornography is a crime scene photograph. For a child to be in a picture means the child had to be harmed. You can't have child porn without harming a child. So when you talk about molesters who pass child porn like boys would do trading baseball cards, and they tell stories and they keep memories of something about, a ribbon or a pair of panties or something to remember that child. But the child porn getting passed on is sexualized child abuse. But it's not only harmful to the child in the moment. It's a crime scene happened, but now they have to live with that going all over the world and not knowing who all is getting their stuff off on their picture. So it never, ever, ever.
It's like repeat molestation.
Totally. Over and over and over again. Why it's so important to have felony around a child porn picture. And we think, oh, well, they only had a few. No, hello. You just say they only molested 2 or 3 kids and that's no big deal. Are you kidding me? You had to harm the child to take that picture.
Well, that's stories that I've heard and I've seen these cases, child sexual assault material trading, use, and the prison sentences are a complete slap on the wrist.
Right.
But to your point, you're saying, well, prison sentences aren't enough. You could throw them all in jail and throw away the key.
Right.
But that's not in your view, the solution. There needs to be what? What is the path forward?
Well, the path forward is to have places for people to change and heal, and for future potential molesters as well. Why do we wait till they molest before we do something? So that means having safe environment for people who are, I hate this language, but because this is how the left has kind of, the extreme left has framed it, but it's child attraction. So if you have a child attraction, or that you're born with a child attraction, is the way they look at it.
MAPS,
so,
minor attracted person.
Yeah, minor. Yeah. So it's like,
it's like this fun LGBT identity.
Totally.
Now.
And it's ridiculous.
And you're saying it's a deeply wounded, broken state.
Exactly.
Likely to do with your own experience of being molested yourself as a child, that needs deep therapy before you would even want to offend, or before you have the opportunity to offend, God forbid.
Some people who are molested never pass it on. So not every person who's been molested.
I would say most. Would you say that's
Right.
fair?
I would
Most
say that's
people
fair.
who are molested
Right.
don't molest.
But some of them may stay in the child attraction world, where they fantasize and they see imagery and they consume video. And so they play with it up to the line of never doing it, but they think that they're getting away with it. But every video they see, they're paying for a child to be harmed. So they contribute to the mess. They're not free and clear. So the idea is, if we can arrest that, if we can help people in that framework, do you know how many people will come forward and say, I have a minor attraction fantasy? You think that they would?
Nobody.
No,
But
you know
nobody
why?
would say that today. Yeah.
Yeah, you know why?
Yeah.
Right. So then how in the world are we helping them?
Well, the only people talking about it are these kind of far left propagandists who want to sort of make that a okay identity.
They want to affirm it.
Well, they say as long as they're not acting on it, we can affirm it. Like it's not innate. It's not inherently a bad thing to be. Let it just be. That would be this horrible, viewpoint.
Right.
But to your point, you're saying it's a real wounded state that many people find themselves in.
Right.
And there's no outlet. There's no way.
No.
Outlet is the wrong word. Excuse me. There's no path to healing and freedom from that.
No. And especially if you're saying that they're minor attracted, that you're born that way. So that's normal and that's okay. Just play with the imagery and play with the fantasy, but just don't do harm. Well, wait a minute. As soon as you view an image, you're harming.
Well, there's this very now infamous interview that happened with Dennis Prager. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's a radio talk show host, and I understand he's not doing well physically right now, so we should pray for him to feel better. But he to be recovered. But apparently, he said on a show that as long as it wasn't real children, if it was kind of cartoons of child porn, it wouldn't be innately wrong.
Well, now we could spend a whole week in session about child porn. And because I worked with LAPD for years, I didn't work for them.
I feel like, Gene, we got to do a follow-up episode about preventing and protecting children specifically. I know sex trafficking, anti-sex trafficking work includes this, but I think this is its own
Where they're getting
episode.
away with, I'll just say this real quick and know that we need to have more conversation, right? Because otherwise we'll be here another 5 hours for sure. Is that when the reason why they get away with online child porn is that they take a head of a child and they put something else in its place, or it's digital messed with. And so you don't know whether that's a real child or whether it's not. They blurred the lines so that you can't prosecute, because right now,
now it can't be prosecuted.
You can't prosecute something because the whole basis for the law is that you have to have a victim. So who's the child? And if you don't have a victim, then what do you do with it? And
it's very dark.
So it's very dark and it's very purposeful. And, groups like NAMBLA, Love Association, and Renee Guyon Society, and some of those that are pedophile organizations that are trying to get everything legal, are pushing. And the way you push is you start with cartoons. Cartoons is the entry level.
So evil.
It is. So anyhow,
It is its own topic, and thank you for, going with me down these different paths. I know there's so much more to talk about here. In terms of solutions, you've been spending now decades on solutions, first for yourself and now for others.
Yeah.
You've got this documentary film, Buying Her, out. You have multiple organizations you're affiliated with that you've been working with. Tell me about the solutions and why you have hope, because we are the walking wounded in this country, sexually speaking, and there's so much brokenness and perversion. What would you say are your top reasons for hope that you've seen?
Since 1985, I worked in the anti-trafficking and anti-pornography work. And I got all kinds of awards and got all, kind of accolades and for shutting down businesses, closing up shop, stopping the porn and shutting down those clubs and getting them regulated, getting the strongest possible laws in place. And then I was hired by the National Coalition Against Pornography and asked me to come and do the same thing in other cities that I did in LA. And so I did that. So for several years in Ohio, the organization was helping build coalitions in other cities across the nation. I'm getting to this point with saying we did all that work. We did a lot of work to impact the business.
Because you understood the buyer.
Right. But at the end of the day, all those people that I work with, we got all those businesses regulated and got them into a place. Some of them got closed down because they were just fronts for prostitution and all that. Anyhow, we got them all closed down, and then the internet comes. And everything that we had done literally went sky high, doubled, tripled, and everybody had this. It's like you poured your heart into changing this, and it just got way worse just by the internet becoming so that now you can't, how do you even do this? So what it did was it made me think, we're not changing this. We're not, by just doing the legislation, law enforcement, judicial process, community awareness, we're not stopping this. It's important to do. It's necessary to have safeguards and punishment and consequences, but we have to change this. And so I did a reevaluation, and I said, okay, so what was it that made me change? And I'm going, well, I already knew it was wrong for years, and I didn't stop. So it isn't going to be awareness that's going to stop it. It actually has to get to the heart of this. It has to get to the heart of the buyer. In other words, the why. What's the appetite? What drives a man to think and consume? So they're the mind and the heart. The thinking, and then what causes the heart to want. So the idea of what drove me to want to think, or to think that I could buy a woman, pay for her, and have no remorse. And that's going to change. That's what's going to change things. When I change the heart of the consumer, and it just hit me and going, well, what's going wrong is we're not really getting to the heart of this. We're just doing manicuring everything. And is it good work? Yes, heck yes, it's good work. And I would never downplay anything that's been done. I'd say do more of it. It's great. But we're missing the element of what drives this. And when you're looking at the second largest income for organized crime, is trafficking.
First is drugs?
No, first is firearms. And so drugs is third. You think about how much money is being spent on that, and it's unbelievable amount of money. And so what that means is, and this is something that is really important, that means there's a dedicated consumer. So it's like apple pie in America. We're not getting we think this is over in a corner somewhere. We think this is over in some kind of a backwoods or dark part of the web. It may be there, but there's so much more to this than the dark. This is being done right under our nose. We're consumers. We have the internet. A person can be consuming pornography right in front of you on their phone, and you wouldn't know it.
How many people in churches, your average church right now, would you say is well, using porn, I know that can be up in the 90% profile potentially, depending on the given group. What about prostitutes?
There's not any real,
and I shouldn't say 90%. I know there's numbers that say that. I wouldn't put it that high, but it's too high. It's high.
I'm just gonna say that in the conservative number is that in the upper 60% of men and medium range of 40% for women. The women is increasing big time. That used to be way back like 18%, 20% in
For
women.
porn use, you're
for
saying.
porn users and also the clubs. And so the women are becoming consumers. And so we look at that and we're going, okay, the appetite to that is the why. And to answer that is important because when we look at the Christian community alone, we're saying that there's men who are saying they're practicing their Christianity, which means reading their Bible, going to church, doing their spiritual stuff, and pay their tithes. And those people, there's a large percentage that are actually consuming. And some of them actually think that it's okay.
Because sex is a need.
Right. And so we have some who see it as bad. And so when you're looking at church and you're looking at, you have the liberal framework of church and you have the conservative frame and they see things differently. But the idea is that there is a large consumer. And so the appetite is so big that we must, if we're going to be a church, and then just going to get to this holding of hope, sorry to kind of get around, but if the church wants to be relevant to the people that are attending and the people that are in their culture, then we have to address this issue. But we're not. There's only 10% of the church is actually doing something like a small group or some kind of a workshop.
Sex recovery program.
Sex recovery, 10% at the max.
But you're saying every parish and church in America should have some sort of program.
If we say we want to be relevant and we want to help the people, I mean, literally help the people sitting in our congregation, then we've got to address this. This is not a small baby. What if you said that 50% of your congregation struggles with some kind of fantasy and some kind of porn consumption? What are you going to do with that? You're going to just deny that it's there? You're just going to not pretend like it's not important? It's a perfect opportunity for the church to actually have impact and become relevant in this culture by providing and backing up their word that says, hey, this isn't healthy, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to provide resources for you to get help. We're going to give you a safe space to heal and to change. And we're going to get you on your feet. But we're not doing that.
Well, I think, I think about it. We are the church.
Right.
People, I'm a Catholic, and so we have, churches worshiping God. It's the Mass, it's receiving the Eucharist. But it's like the lay people, we're the church. So you doing a mission to serve and help these people, pro-life mission, whatever the mission is, like this is part of God's church. It has to be.
Right.
And it's in service of not just his people, but it's in service of the other souls, even that are not in the church yet. When you talk about, this kind of a program that the church could have, what would you say are the top 3 best practical resources that any Christian should be aware of that can be used to help somebody who is struggling with porn use or with other sexually immoral behavior or activities?
The one that's most equipped to handle the numbers across the board is a group called Pure Desire. Mm-hmm. And they have programs and counselors that actually help in the church, men and women, and they're really good at it. One of my mentors, the guy's name is Ted Roberts. He wrote a book on it called Pure Desire. I'm in his book. He's a good guy. I like him. Very brilliant, smart, good program. Our work, we do retreats, workshops, conferences, counseling, retreats. So, and we're Authentic Relationships International. But the thing is, we're still in the middle of trying to get, the funding to so we can get ourselves online better and to put up systems that people can get help, because it's not going to just be doing a retreat somewhere where I have 60 people show up and then they do the hard work. Hallelujah for that. But how many millions are struggling, and I'm only doing 60 at a time. So we have to do we have to grow this, but there are other organizations as well. And you just kind of look at, there's some online, what is that? It comes to me in a second.
Have you heard of Covenant Eyes?
Covenant Eyes is a computer software program, right? And there are a lot of software programs out there that provide real accountability for the person who's consuming. And so that's really good. Yeah. And they have some good information. But the people who are actually doing the work with people in the trenches is where so that's where Pure Desire is. See. Yeah.
So there are different kinds of tools.
Yeah. Covenant Eyes is not necessarily doing that. They're an informational piece and they're a software company and they're great. I love them.
We love them for, just it's a good thing for anyone to have on their phone, their computer. It's a way to protect your family.
Yeah. And so you having good software, there's other programs out there, and I don't have them in front of me, but there are programs out there where you can actually know what your children are consuming and what they're doing on social media and all that. It's necessary, because right now, if you look at OnlyFans, right, and we're seeing kids,
so dark.
It's dark. And
we're all becoming pornified together. Yeah. I know I'm taking you a different route, so thank you so much for kind of going these different directions. Back to that question of hope.
Okay.
You were talking about how you were doing all this work in the 90s and making all this progress and all these other groups, coalitions, fighting trafficking, fighting pornography, and then bam, internet. And it's just a complete insanity today. Like the proliferation of child sexual assault material. Yeah. There is obviously the rise of now OnlyFans. Everyone's now pornifying themselves directly. I don't know if child abuse rates have gone up. My guess would be they would have in the wake of all of this. It is complete. You could say Sodom and Gomorrah, if you want to use a biblical reference, but it is the walking wounded out there.
Yeah. There are two ways to look at this. The one is that we're going to hell in a handbasket, right? And that this is worse than we ever dreamed. This is our worst nightmare. Those who have been in this battle for a long time are going, oh my gosh, this is way beyond anything that I could have ever imagined. Who could think that a child could sell herself at 14 online in the privacy of her bedroom and make money?
And sometimes her dad's giving the thumbs up.
Well, they don't know, because the kids are doing that while their parents are at work, right? Or they're doing it at bedtime when nobody is up. So the whole idea of monetizing, because how would you even prosecute? You wouldn't even know. How do you get that? It's so hard to go after. So anyhow, so you have that, like, oh my gosh, we're just a disaster. Or we can look at this and say, this is the greatest opportunity church has ever had to have impact.
Christians have ever had. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what do we need to do? Well, first, this is absolutely necessary. So if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray. So the first step is face your own stuff. So how are you tied to this? And I have so many people who want to be in the anti-porn world that actually just came out. They're still in it and they want to fight porn. And I'm saying, no, I want you to fight porn here first. I want you to deal with it here first. Because if you don't deal with it here, you're just going to go right back in the hole. It's just a matter of time. I'm not going to set you up. It's like asking somebody to go to combat alcoholism and I have them work in the bar. Mm. It's just not wise, right? So deal with your own stuff first. And so a lot of the women that are in the anti-trafficking world are in it because they've been wounded and they've been harmed and they've been victims of it. Hallelujah that you're using your efforts for good. But if you don't heal too, then you're putting your venom and your harm on everyone. You're not helping anybody.
Your anger about what happened to you.
Yeah, you're not helping, because helping means that you actually help people heal, not just get them out. That's great. You know how many people we've gotten out of the industry and they go back because we give them nothing to really follow up with?
Well, we were just talking with Brittany De La Mora.
Yeah.
again, was born again, went to a church, had this born again experience, went right back in.
Yeah.
Afterwards.
Yeah.
It was like her way she made money. The guy was involved, and it took years
Totally.
to really get fully out.
So do the inner.
Now she's amazing, speaking out about this, but it was a year's process.
So you do the inner work first. And it doesn't mean you can't help, but you help at the level that you're capable in your own heart to handle. So you help as you feel healthier to do so, but do the personal work first. So the biggest mistake I made was I got into the anti-porn fight before I did the anti-porn fight here.
Yeah, I'm curious about the timeline. You made a comment earlier about 44 years in the work, and you can't be that old. So I was thinking you got involved in this in your 30s at minimum. Okay, but you said you were still falling.
Still falling.
So you got involved in the work even while you were not clean yet.
Right.
And you're telling people, don't do that.
Don't do that.
Do the work even if it takes a decade.
Yeah. Because I had great intentions, because I absolutely hated what that did to my world. But what I was doing is putting all my unresolved stuff into the fight, and it makes me I come across judgmental. I come across angry. I come across as non-relational. It's because I'm still undone here, right? So I'm trying to do the fight out here, and so I start fighting people when I really want to fight the system, but I want to fight this first. So it's do your personal work, and doing the personal work, then you bring other men along, other women along. Start helping them heal. And then as you feel healing, you can step into the fight, but you're actually stepping into the fight already when you help others start healing. You're actually stepping in the fight when you actually resolve your own stuff, because you're one less consumer or one less victim. So do the work personally first. And we want to jump into the fight because we know how damaging it is and how it's hurting people. But take a step back and give yourself space and get into it. And then find groups and organizations that you can volunteer for.
And your favorite for doing the work, when you keep saying doing the work, you have Authentic Relationships International. Would you say connect with me? I can help provide that template for you.
Yeah. So we've skipped around the heart and soul of what we do. We haven't talked about, and it's not anybody's fault. Just we have a lot going when we're talking. But the heart and center of this is the scriptures teach that everything in scripture is dependent on two scriptures. What are they? To love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. So it's relational. So everything depends upon relationships. And so when someone says, I have sobriety, I say, okay, that's cool. You're sobriety. You've been away from your drug or whatever for 5 years, 5 months, 3 weeks, whatever. Good for you. I'm glad for you. But I want to ask the more important question. How are your relationships? Because that's what's going to take to change. If you still have the big messes and you're free of your drug or free of porn or free of whatever, and your relationships are hell in a handbasket, then you are still going to go back. Why? Because it's those broken relationships that got you there. And so you begin to restore and rebuild your relational world. And so that means to help somebody heal, I want to, first of all, look at the things that sabotage your ability to connect, your ability to have close relationships. And when you look at anyone who's gone through trauma, has gone through hurt and pain, they got walls that are a mile thick, and they're not letting anybody in. So they're relating from like me standing behind the wall over there and trying to talk to you. You're not going to get the full me. There's distance there. So everybody can see that. So the only way that brings healing here is, I'm going to use the word intimacy. Into me see. That you see into my life, you see me for the struggles, and you see me for my strengths, and you still love me. That's what I need. Both men and women need intimacy, not just for sex, but because intimacy and sex are not the same thing. So I need intimacy. I need closeness. I need connection. I am a relational being. And if I have good connections. It gives me the life that I need to be able to say no to the dark, to the dark stuff, to the unhealthy stuff, to the superficial stuff. So the goal is rebuild the relational world. And what are the things that are getting in the way? We'll help you deal with those. The pain that you're carrying, that you don't trust, you don't want to be vulnerable, you don't want to risk. Well, let's get into that. Let's look at the shame. And then we heal and we begin to learn and get the tools. And then we begin to look at what are our needs relationally. And as we learn to do healthier relationships, the healthier we become and the healthier choices we make. So this is not about stopping something. This is about becoming something. And so I know that sounds really like pretty simple.
No, it's amazing.
It's spot on.
It's spot on. Well, because what is moral law? It's about rightly ordered relationships.
Right.
The 10 Commandments, it's all about how do you relate to God and each other.
Right.
And also yourself. And that's the whole question of how do we order our behavior?
And I don't want to go too far down this, but it's like when Jesus says, hey, this talks to the people, it says, haven't we done all these things in your name? And we've accomplished all this. We've cast out demons. We've healed the sick and we've changed the lives. And Jesus says, I don't even know you. And what is he doing? He's separating what are doing from who we are in connection. What is important is it's relational connection, because connection brings life. Connection brings joy. Connection brings hope. And when we have that, we have everything. And when we sacrifice it, we get hurt. So I want to focus, if you don't mind, 1 second around the draw to pornography. I kept talking about the why. So the whole idea of looking at what is the need first. And the first thing is that I longed for connection. I longed for intimacy, but I was too afraid to do so because I was afraid that if you saw the real me, it would be the end of me. So I had walls up. I didn't let anybody in. And so the draw to porn was that this woman positioned herself in the pictures that said, here I am, I want you, welcome to my world. And that was, I felt wanted, I felt desired, I felt important. It doesn't mean I am going to get that. It's the thirst that it's touching, right? Welcome to my world, I want you, you matter to me, and I'm wide open. There's no clothes, there's no hiddenness. It has the sense, the illusion that there's, intimacy. But the truth is then that no matter how much I go to that image, it's going to walk. She's not going to be in my world. She's not going to hug me. She's not going to cry for me or be sad for me. She's not going to celebrate with me for the world. She doesn't know me. I don't know her. So there's no intimacy. So it's the illusion of intimacy that drew me to the material. But it's real intimacy that changes it. That is a huge deal. It's not small. Because what I see is we keep going back to the dry well. When Jesus went to the woman at the well, he's saying, the 3 men you've been with, none of those are going to quench your thirst. You're going to still keep going back to that well because you're going to always end up thirsty. What I bring brings life. What I bring quenches your thirst. And the idea is that he's offering her relationship. And that's the point, is that intimacy is the need. It's not sex. So it's when 2 people know each other inside and out. You see me, I see you, and there's no hiddenness, no secrets, no pretending, no hiding. And you see the real me. You see my struggles, you see my fears, you see my mistakes, you see my strength, you see my gifting, and you're still attracted to me. And I see yours, and I'm still attracted to you. To my wife, I'm attracted to her. So the 2 of us are fully seen and fully loved. That's our need right there. Fully seen and fully loved. So when we get that, then sex becomes an outflow of intimacy. You can't have intimacy from sex because paid for that, did that, been there all over, and sex with somebody, and they didn't know me and I didn't know them. So it was all an illusion. It's all empty. They walk away. They're not in my life. And so, yeah, for the moment, it feels great, but it just creates even a greater hole. So to have intimacy where two people are seen and know each other and love each other, that's the need. That means that I don't need sex to have the relationship work. I need intimacy. And sex becomes a celebration of that connection. And so it's not about needing to learn about sex and behaviors and different positions and different styles. It's about learning how to connect and learning what is getting in the way so that we have better connection. So intimacy or sex, the way God created it to be, is meant to be an outflow, a celebration of connection. It's never meant to be experienced outside of connection. Connection is always the groundwork that makes sex work.
Well, it's so wild to have to just note that our entire sexual education system, all our sex ed today, is about the physical feeling. Right. Is it safe? Do I like this?
Right.
It's not about a relationship.
No.
And the only relationship sex belongs in is a marriage, because that's the only setup where you are all in one flesh for life, total commitment, total trust, total intimacy. Right. And then sex is the one flesh union to show the spiritual, emotional thing that's happened.
Yep.
But our culture, we brainwash a generation of children. I mean, this gets me worked up. We brainwash a generation of children to think that sex is about a touch.
Right.
As opposed to a relationship.
And when a couple comes in and they say, our sex life's a mess, I'm saying, okay, stop for a second. It's not your sex life that's a mess. How are you connecting? And 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
They're not connecting.
Yeah.
So we do the work to help them get reconnected. And believe me, when you get them connected, you don't have to talk about the sex part. Because
they can figure it out.
They can figure that out.
Yeah.
It's just the reality of that. And that if sex was the need, then children would need it at birth, and grandparents would have to have it too to survive, or a paraplegic would have to have it, somebody in the hospital would have to have it.
Well, we know yeah.
Right? Because need is eating, drinking, breathing air, right? I know I'm preaching to the choir, but a need is something you cannot live without. So why is it that we can live without sex and survive? And the truth is that some people are called to live celibate lives. And how in the world does God call on them to a less than perfect life because they're not doing sex? No, not at all. No, sex is meant to be a gift to us to celebrate our connection in the right scenario, which is the marriage, the man and woman coming together in a marriage. But I still need intimacy with everyone. The different ones, not everyone, but to have safe individuals that I build friendships with. And I have people that walk alongside of me and know me, and I know them, and intimacy happens. And the more connection happens, the more alive I feel, the more purpose I sense, because I'm impacting their lives. And I'm seeing that there's a reason for my world to be and my gifts and all that, that it makes me feel alive, and it makes me feel like I'm full. And the more full I am, the better choices I make. So Scripture says, and out of Ephesians, it says that if you're full of the Spirit, you will not fulfill the lust of the flesh. And simply meaning, get all the spiritual language out of it. And is you're so full of what is good for you that you won't do the bad. So it's giving you the strength to say no to the things that are unhealthy. So the focus is to actually help you fill your life for what God intended. And whatever is in the way of that, hey, let's face it. Let's work through it. It ain't easy, but we can do it, because your purpose is to walk out something different than what you're experiencing.
And you have walked it.
Yeah, I mean,
incredible.
And it makes the difference. It makes all the difference in the world, because I've been there, done that, and I know that stuff is junk compared to what I'm tasting in this world. And in my relationship right now with my wife is by far beyond anything I could have ever dreamed about, because she knows me fully. No, there's no secrets. I know her fully. She has my passwords. She can go on anytime she wants to. We talk about things. We work through things. we have the tools to deal with conflict, and every relationship has it. But the more we connect, the better our life is. And the better our life is, the more we move together to have impact. And I'm so excited about our journey together because we are moving in the same direction, on the same path. And she's just amazing. And the way she loves right now, which is beyond anything I've ever experienced. And would I want to go back to the old world? Excuse me, but no. No way. And so it makes all the difference in the world when you're hitting on what you need and facing the things that have created pain. And then living life in a whole place. Yeah.
Jean, thank you. This has been amazing. Where can people find the film and find your work?
So Buying Her is still being premiered and it's not out fully yet. But if you want to contact me, I can get them connected with the places that they can get it. But we're premiering it in Anchorage at August 1st. And there's other places, New Hampshire, there's Florida, there's Texas that are also premiering it coming up in the next several months. And so they've been fighting this for about a year and a half or so to get it actually out there, but it's just been, they'll get it, but it will be sometime this year so that they can go on a website and view it and see it.
Great. How can people find your work?
Well, I'm at Authentic Relationships International, and we're on the web, we're in the middle of revamping our work and growing, but there's plenty of stuff there for people to check into. And if they want to contact us and see what we're doing in retreats or workshops, they want some counseling or they want to do some couples stuff, we do that online and Zoom, no matter where you are. We just want to help you in any way we can. And if we can't help you, we'll point you to people who can, especially if you want a face-to-face in their area. We can do that.
Thank you so much, Jean. Thank you. Thank you for being so vulnerable and willing to not just share on this podcast, but I know share again and again your story, including the darkest moments of your life and the opportunity that every person has for redemption.
Well, thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Lila Rose Show. Make sure to check out Jean McConnell's work. It is linked in the description, and check out the amazing mission of Exodus Cry. Let's pray for each other and pray for everybody who is struggling with lust, sexual addiction, or any kind of sexual dysfunction. Let's pray for freedom and healing and for a renewed culture. And a huge thank you to EWTN, Eternal Word Television Network, which is the largest religious broadcaster in the world. You can get access to Lila Rose Show episodes 24 hours in advance at EWTN.com/on-demand. And a big thank you to EWTN and their incredible mission to bring souls to Jesus.